everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Plug in Play podcast. I'm your host, Henry, and this is your checkpoint for video game reviews, news, and all the hot takes nobody asked for. This episode, we have PlayStation finally responding to the disc situation. You know the situation. They're taking away discs. What in the world could they say? We have Xbox continuing to be Xbox. Corporate financials. Oh, goody, goody. Numbers, math, business, Econ 101. I can't wait. I'll try to make it entertaining for you. And of course, for impressions, we have Black Myth Wukong. Bet you didn't see that coming. A Chinese Souls-like that took the world by storm. One of the best-selling games of that year, nominated for Game of the Year at the Game Awards, only with an 81 on Metacritic. Isn't that an interesting thing? Just an interesting thing. We'll get into what my thoughts are on the game in the impression segment, along with a smattering of other impressions, including Rhythm Heaven Groove, the newest installment in the Rhythm Heaven series, a Nintendo IP that's weird, wacky, and musical. We'll get into that, but first, we have a few things to talk about. In fact, it's the housekeeping, everybody's favorite part of the podcast, where I get to tell you can follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podcast Addict, your favorite podcast service, whatever it is. We're there, and you can listen to us anytime, anywhere on your mobile phone, browser, TV screen. You have unlimited options. It's amazing. Leave us a review while you're there. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, mostly what you like, and hopefully a 5-star review. I'm not going to beg, but I will plead. Please, for the love of God, give us a 5-star review. And while you're in the mood of following, why not follow us on Twitter or X, whatever you prefer, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, all on the handle Plug in Play Pod 1. Remember that, Plug in Play Pod with Plug in Play Pod 1. I'm not going to edit that. That's too much work. I'm not going to edit that. Who's really listening to the housekeeping anyway? But you can follow us on all of those socials at Plug and Play Pod 1. We greatly appreciate it. While you're there, you can even leave us a comment, and you can be featured in the comment corner. It's a wonderful little corner where I get with the people who yell at me on the internet, and I yell back. Or sometimes we have a fun little conversation like friends, cordially. And we can do that. You can also do that by sending us an email over at pluginplaypodcast1@gmail.com. If that is too long to remember, it is in the description. And while you're there, there's timestamps. If you like what I'm saying, you want to hear something else specifically, or if you don't and you just want to skip it, you can. It's a magical technological feat called timestamps that take you anywhere you want to go within this wild world of the Plug and Play podcast. I do it for you. It's a labor of love, and that is the housekeeping. How's it going? Everything going okay? You trying to salvage up all your PlayStation discs? I know I am. Getting out there in the world, trying to figure out the economics of the gaming industry. It feels like that's all I've been talking about the past few weeks. And I will continue to. In fact, in an even more weirdly autistic Radio Man type fashion, because of course we had the financials for all of the big corporations, specifically Sony and Microsoft, which of course both own Xbox and PlayStation as subsidiaries. Not Xbox is not a subsidiary, but PlayStation is a subsidiary of Sony. So in this case, we get to go through and see what people... I mean, it's really the first time anybody's been able to actively be like, I guess, hold these companies' feet to the fire, right? Sony has not really made any public statements to the gaming industry in a while, and investors are really the only people that can get to talk to. So that's kind of where we get the statements from later in the news segment. It was a very slow week for news. It's because it's just been so jam-packed the past few weeks. I mean, I've been talking about discs or layoffs or restructurings or anything in between. It's been a very depressing past few episodes. I feel like I've come around. The whole disc thing kind of bummed me out initially. Losing physical altogether, something that's been a big part of my gaming life as a as a little toddler growing up, waking up and unwrapping gifts under the tree for my birthday and all the other wonderful holidays where people would give me free things because I was a child and couldn't afford anything else with my own money. But now that I have my own money, I don't do that anymore. But I still buy things physically because it's just financially just a lot cheaper. But anyways, the point is it was a little bumming to have that kind of stripped away from me. And now I've kind of come around to like, well, you just kind of have to accept it. After doing all the research I've done and seeing like, no, like it's dead. It's dead. It's just kind of it's a lot easier to accept knowing something's dead. It's the 5 stages of grief. All right? I've been through them all. At this point I've reached acceptance. We've gotten there. So, I feel like that's really a better conversation for when we get to the news because we will be diving deep into the PlayStation disc fiasco again because there just continues to be more news surrounding that. And I do think it is easily the biggest, second biggest, really. I do think that the Xbox restructuring is the biggest news of the gaming industry. It just simply objectively is. Gamers are currently far more angry about the disc situation, but it's far less of an important part of the gaming industry because 85% of the games that people buy right now are digital anyways. So it's a fraction of the gaming community that's actually even remotely affected by this, yet alone can be upset by it. So anyway, Microsoft laying off people, restructuring, trying to change their entire business model. That is clearly a much more important deal. But people want to talk about the whole disc thing. So you know what? I am not one to shy away from giving the people what they want. So we're going to talk more about it. So now that I've rambled for the better part of what? Longer than I should have. 7 minutes. Sorry, I'm a little under the weather. But just the heat strokes I've been having doing work out in the yard. But anyway, let's talk about the comment corner, shall we? Let's get into the comment corner. I love the comment corner. One of my favorite parts of the show, where if you leave a comment on any part of any short I leave on any socials, any episode, any review, anything, I will read it on the show if I believe that it is a good conversation starter. So, in this case, I had a lot of really good engagement actually over the past couple of weeks. I'm not going to read off all the comments. I never do, obviously. But in this case, I like to point out that I did not see that many comments on the PlayStation Physical anymore. It seems to be dying down. 2 is I had a clip from about Xenoblade. So I talked about Xenoblade last week on the podcast, and it was a big hit. People really, really like Xenoblade. And it's funny, too, because every time I comment or I post a clip about Xenoblade, I posted a couple from Nintendo Directs when they announced things about Xenoblade, and I obviously posted the review that I had earlier. And it seems to be that whenever people comment on that, they just leave fun facts about Xenoblade. I don't understand why that is, but I mean, they just leave fun facts. It's like, oh, did you know Xenoblade was actually tangentially related to Final Fantasy VII and Chrono Trigger because it was originally going to be a new Final Fantasy game, and the studios got cut off and made it their own IP. And I was like, no, I didn't know that. I don't know what this really has to do with the video I just posted, but yes, that is a fun fact about Xenoblade. That is something that has happened several times. I'm so used to it's honestly kind of sad, but like I'm so used to people being so confrontational in the comments because I do post mostly hot takes, right? I mean, they're not hot to me, they're just right. Let's be real. But in this case, I do try to post hot takes because it typically does get conversation going. But people never try to engage in conversation on the internet in like a cordial way. It's like a very aggressive conversation where I'm just the dumbest person they've ever met and like they have to tell me why I'm stupid. And like, hey, I appreciate the conversation regardless, but like even when people don't do that, it's like that's when it gets really upsetting because it's like, well, somebody just comments like a fun fact, and I'm like, when did I even talk about Final Fantasy being related to this in any fashion whatsoever? Like, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, they're not correcting me on anything. They're just letting me know. Yeah, it's a fun fact. It's like, oh, okay. Well, that's very kind of you. In this case, a lot of the comments that I got were actually about the Steam machine. I know, passe at this point, right? The Steam machine was announced about a month ago at this point, but I just posted some clips about it and found it got a lot of engagement in terms of comments, mainly from people who really appreciate Valve. And I did know that there were like Valve fanboys out there, but I've always just kind of assumed PC people were like way more even keel. Like when I think of the console wars, I think of the console gamers being pissed off at each other for like no real reason other than just like a blind allegiance to a corporation. Like that makes sense. You know, like I've just kind of expected that over the decades. And with PC, they've always just kind of been off on their own thing and never really interacted with anybody. They just kind of take people, kind of swoop in and take some gamers every once in a while in the night and just kind of adopt them into the PC ecosystem like a vampire or something. But in this case, Valve is the company behind Steam, which is the pretty much number one by a significant margin PC marketplace for games. And they produced the Steam machine, and I had a clip that essentially said, this thing is dead on arrival because its price point is kind of ridiculous. And I stand by that. And I don't even know much. So I have to clarify all of this with I'm not even a hardware guy. Like, that's just not my expertise. That's not my foray in expertise at all. It is software and business. That is where kind of my expertise lies. And hardware, when people start talking about frickin' CPUs, GPUs, bro, that stuff changes so constantly. Naming conventions are so difficult to keep up with. My eyes glaze over. I can't keep up with that stuff. So, like, I respect the mother efforts out there who do. I think it is a vital part of the hobby and an important part of the hobby. But I do think people get way too frickin' into it to a point where they really make it seem like not fun to be in hardware. Like you got to get the best graphics card, and if you're not at the top specs, then like you're a loser, and blah 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 blah. You need to have everything high frame rate, high pixels, high everything. I'm like, okay, dude, I don't care about that. Like that's just not how I play games. But anyway, we're really getting off on a different tangent here. Here's what I had a few comments kind of calling me out, all right, on the Steam machine. And here's Chaz Hughes from Facebook, who, as I've kind of implied, was a little aggressive, which the reason I say that here is he's on Facebook. So, like, I have this guy's real name and face. I don't know why people on Facebook, and this is something also, I feel like I'm rambling a lot in this episode today. I apologize, but I feel like this is something I notice a lot just browsing Facebook. Specifically, like I get on Marketplace. I don't post anything on Facebook or anything like that, but I get on Marketplace all the time to try and see if there's any good deals out there. People will comment on stuff all the time, and they'll just be mean. And they'll just be mean mother effers to people. It's like, why are you being so mean to people? That, like, not only are you commenting on a local post on a marketplace, like this is somebody in your area that you could eventually like come in contact with, but you are also giving them access to your name and face and being like, you're dumb. And I'm like, okay, we need to take a step back because that just seems unhinged. That's an unhinged behavior. I mean, if you go on, my mom goes on Facebook all the time. She tells me all these crazy stories about like, oh yeah, there's the what's happening in this neighborhood group and all the housewives just get on there and just trash talk each other. I'm like, why are you doing that? They'll just post pictures of people who like have their dogs are like pooping in their yard, and they'll be like, this person is the worst person alive. And it's like, okay, why do we need to do that on a public forum where everybody knows everybody? Like that just seems mean. It just seems mean-spirited. I don't know what it is about Facebook that encourages that kind of mentality. But Chaz, he embraces it. So he says, quote, Valve provided full Windows 11 driver support. There's no locked hardware, so yes, people will install Windows on their PC, making it a fully accessible to other store platforms. Imagine thinking PC gamers won't mess with and mod/tinker with their platform. Laughing emoji, laughing emoji. Steam also allows developers to generate keys 100% free through external third-party processes and takes a 0% cut. They also allow self-publishing, which other platforms don't. Meaning that yes, they do take a 30% cut, but the rest is actually yours rather than having to further pay a publisher. The hate on Steam is unreal. They're the best for consumers of the gaming giants, and that's still not enough. Absolute waste of a video and very misleading. Terrible journalism if that's the intended goal. So I guess I should go ahead and say I'm not a journalist. That would be cool. I'm not though. I'm just some dude on the internet who just has just talks about video games. Nobody cares about me, but I try to make it worth people's while, I guess. But anyways, I'm not a journalist. So I have to disagree there. I'm not trying to be a journalist, so this is hopefully not flopping in that way. Number 2 is I should address that this video specifically called out Valve for not subsidizing the console. So that probably would have been something good to lead with. I feel like this, I'm sorry. It's really, the heat stroke has gotten to me. I'm all over the place today. I promise by the time we get to the news, I have notes that are much more prepared to handle the topics. So don't leave me. But anyways, so Valve should have subsidized the Steam machine. So Valve released the Steam machine at $1,000 plus, various tiers, various models, depending on if you got a controller or if you didn't, the terabytes within the device, and so on and so forth. Very expensive machine. The most notable fact about this is that the parts inside of it account for or amount to about the same amount of power as a base PlayStation 5. So, when you do the math on that, it kind of leads you to believe, wow. And I get it. We're in a freaking chip shortage. Components for this kind of technology are insanely overpriced right now. I understand. So Valve came out and said, look, we wanted to release it at maybe $750, $800, something like that. But we can't economically, that's just simply not feasible anymore. So we had to up the price. So if you went out and you bought the components for a Steam machine individually, piecemeal, you could get them far cheaper than if you bought them as a whole put together by Steam. Now, this is not typically abnormal. If you build your own PC, you're going to obviously get a better price. Let's say if you bought a pre-built PC that has the same specs as a Steam machine does, then you still would be paying significantly less on the market right now than what Steam has put the device at. So that's already a big problem, right? Well, then you say, well, whoa. They are providing me this machine. It's set up the way they want. It's a Valve product. I trust Valve, blah, blah, blah. It's like you pay a premium for an Apple product, just because the hardware inside of it is maybe comparable to other devices that are cheaper. Doesn't matter because you value the brand of Apple. So maybe that's understandable. Here's the thing is that most consoles are subsidized. So PlayStation subsidizes their Steam machine, or not their Steam machine, their PlayStation, because every purchase that you get is 30% off, right? Or not 30% off. They get 30% of every purchase that you make on their console. Netflix, microtransactions, Fortnite V-Bucks, buying a full game, whatever the case is, they get 30% of it. This is the same for pretty much every digital storefront, including Valve, which he admits. But that's why Sony knocks off $200-$300 from their console prices, because they know they're going to get their money back. The lower price is intended to get you in so that you can then be a customer and buy games over the course of a console generation on that console or V-Bucks or whatever the case is, and you can be a recurring revenue source. So that's how Sony makes their money there, even though they're losing money on every console sold, right? So Valve didn't do this. They didn't feel the need to do this. And they said, well, the reason we didn't do this is because it's we can't subsidize it, is because you can use any OS on this. You don't have to use Steam. You can buy your games through GOG or whatever the case is, and we won't make a dime off of you. So we need to be able to make money off of the hardware. Okay. So that's, I think, silly. I think obviously that's silly because Steam is the de facto, like, I don't have stats on it, but I think if you just watch the PC community talk, nobody buys games anywhere else. If you are buying games anywhere else, you are a rare commodity. You are a very, very lonely soul because most people are buying games through Steam. Like, I'd say easily 90% of PC game purchases go through Steam. Has to. You have other smaller stores like Epic Games Store, which seems to be trying to compete with there, but is really struggling. You have GOG, which is certainly niche and has a place, but I don't think people buy the bulk of their games on GOG. You have stuff like itch.io, Humble Bundle, but even these sometimes are either a more niche storefront like itch.io, or their games transfer over to Steam like Humble Bundle. So like it's really, you're getting a Steam copy when you buy that over on Humble Bundle. So it's not that big of a jump in that way to say you're buying on a different storefront. So anyways, fact of the matter is that when you buy a Steam machine, you're going to use Steam. Like, that's just the obvious thing. A Steam machine is made with the intent of like having a streamlined console experience. So if you're a hardcore PC player that wants a hardcore PC setup, you're not going to buy a Steam machine. You're going to buy your own console or your own parts and build your own PC and have your own OS and do things your own way. And that's great. I'm glad PC gives players like you the ability to do that. But for a console player, which that is what a Steam machine is for, is like a more streamlined console-like experience, brother, they are not gonna do that. Like, that's too much work. That is, you want to press a button, your thing turns on, you press a button, a game starts. Like, that is how streamlined you want the experience for a console game, and I totally get it. I totally appreciate that, and I tend to want that experience more. I don't want to have to fiddle with settings and make sure my drivers are updated and all this other bullcrap just to make sure I can sit down and play a game after I get home from an 8-hour shift. Like, that's just not what I want to do, right? So in this, he tries to counter, which I just think this is such an odd counter, that Steam allows people to make keys for free. So this is actually something that Valve has done, and it is very pro publisher, or very pro indie developer specifically, is that I didn't even know this until Valve came out and said they did this, but apparently creating a code for a network, so like if you put in a code for a digital game on, if you get a voucher for, like, GTA is going to be a voucher. If you put in a code, that publisher or that developer had to pay to make a code for that game so they could then allow you to download it, which is very, I think, a little crazy, but at the same time, that is a service they're providing. They have to allow you to generate that and it to work on the back end of their service and all that other stuff. But Steam allows you to do that for free. So that's a pretty good deal. Most publishers or most platforms don't allow for that. It's a lot more restrictive. So Steam allowing you to do that is very nice and a very, very, open idea. And I really love that. But that is really not, I don't know what he's saying here when he says when you self-publish, you don't have to take the 30%. You take the 30% cut from Steam, but you don't have to share it with a publisher. Yeah, that's how being an independent developer works. Like, you don't have a publisher, and you can self-publish on any platform. You can be an indie developer and publish on PlayStation. You can be an indie developer and publish on Nintendo. You may need some ins and outs and a lot more, maybe some elbow grease to open some doors, maybe. But a lot of people who aren't very well connected can just upload a game to PlayStation. They have to go through the, proper approvals and stuff like that. Valve is a lot less approvals. It's a lot more open of a platform. But in general, yeah, you can still self-publish on every platform. So I don't know where he's like, well, you're still going to take a 30% cut, but like Valve allows you to do it without having to pay for a code to be manufactured. Okay. I love that he brought this up because I never hear like that's obviously a very well-educated point. Like he clearly read on this, and I think that he brought up the stats, he brought up the statistics, and I think that that's awesome. But like it doesn't do anything to discredit what I'm saying here. And then of course his main point, which is imagine thinking PC gamers won't mess with and mod and tinker their platforms. I've already kind of addressed this, but like obviously that's silly, right? Like this is a console that is literally designed for people to not mod or tinker with it. Sure you can, but like it's meant to be for people who want a streamlined experience. It's not meant for people who want to tinker. You can. They've allowed that ability, but that doesn't mean people are going to like buy this with the idea that that's what this is for. Like that's literally not what it's even marketed for. So I don't know why he thinks that like this is some gotcha. But in general, I got a lot of comments like this, like a good number of them, saying that I was stupid and that, like why would anybody come after Valve? Like they're doing so good. And I'm like, look, man, look, Valve is doing great. They're easily the best platform right now out of any platform, out of any publisher out there. Nintendo, Microsoft, Steam, literally everything that I've mentioned on this episode up to this point. They are easily the best. For consumers, for publishers, for everybody. They're the best platform. That does not mean they're perfect. And that does not mean if they do something stupid that I'm going to be like, well, Valve, you're just such a little scamp. You run along now. You just don't. You keep doing that, but you shouldn't be doing that. But well, yeah, you're just such a lovable little scamp. I'm just gonna let you get away with it. Like that's not how this works. Not how this works, buddy. So if I see a publisher or a company or anything do something that's stupid, I'm going to say it's stupid. I'm not going to care that they gave me a really good sale the other day and they allowed me to buy a game on their service for a lower price, or they put out a game that I really liked and so I had a lot of fun playing that game, and therefore I can allow them to do whatever they want. Like that's not how I think, okay? So overall, I see, and this was something that kind of took me off guard, was like, oh, Valve has fanboys. Like I didn't realize that. That's new. Valve has fanboys. Okay. Like, I guess PC is just like everywhere else. I always knew that PC had like elitists, PC master race, as a lot of people like to say on the internet. But in this case, I was like, I always just thought it was people just saying, oh, I like PC. I like the ability to mod things. I like the freedom it gives me. I like, X, Y, and Z about PC. There's a lot of things to like about the PC ecosystem, but just saying, oh, I only like Valve, and if Valve even does something that I don't like, then I'm still going to support them and try to rationalize it in some way. Like that, I don't understand that. That's just, that's silly. Now, I understood that kind of mentality, a fanboy mentality, when I was younger, but that was because I had committed to a console. So like when I was younger, I would buy a PlayStation or a GameCube or an Xbox. Like those are your three options as a young gamer in the 1990s, 2000s, whatever. And in this case, I bought a PlayStation 2. Well, it doesn't matter if the PlayStation 2 sucks or not, because I don't have the money to go out and buy a GameCube or an Xbox. I'm freaking 6. So like I can't go out and buy another several $100 console. So what's the obvious thing to do? Well, you justify the purchase. And how do you justify the purchase? Well, you say, well, it is good. When somebody says, oh, well, you didn't make a good decision. Like that sucks about that console. It's like, oh, well, no. Are you kidding? It's actually really, really awesome to really own a GameCube and only have 5 games to play and have the worst performing hardware, and you just don't understand because you're missing out. Like I don't think that's not I don't think. It's the only way to rationalize it. It's the only way to make yourself feel better at night. when you're watching your friends play Halo on Xbox Live and you're over there and you're playing freaking Mario Sunshine by yourself and you're like, bro, I could have done better. And like I know I'm kicking the crap out of the GameCube here. It was the worst selling console of that generation by a significant margin, but I think everybody knows like now the GameCube had a lot of bangers. I think the GameCube aged the best out of all of the consoles from that generation. I'm just saying out of every generation that happens. That's the reason console fanboys exist, is because they bought into one ecosystem and they're pretty much locked in there financially. And it's kind of ridiculous to expect everybody to buy every console because that's a lot of money. And it typically, most gamers aren't going to get the money back for buying an entire console and one or two games or whatever the case is for whatever console they buy. So they have to be viscerally defensive of their decision. And I've always seen a PC gamer as being somebody who's kind of divorced themselves from that and be like, I'm just the PC ecosystem. I don't care about anything else other than the fact that I am where I am and I'm satisfied because there's no other competition. And that doesn't seem to be the case. Like Steam also has that problem too, which is weird. I don't know. I never knew that was really a problem until I said this, and now I know. And so, I don't know. That's just kind of where I got from that. There were a couple of other interesting comments here. I think I went a little long on Chaz. I had a couple of other comments here regarding the Steam Machine, but they were really just more interesting comments. Shout out to Fatty Waddy. He had a really good comment about what if people wanted to bulk buy these consoles for just using them as like a server farm. I think I kind of addressed previously, like the price point on this is just simply unrealistic for that. Even if they knocked it down, you could easily buy other devices for much cheaper. So that would really, like, we'd really be having a significantly discounted console at that point, which Valve was simply never going to do, it seemed like. So it was kind of a non-issue, but I appreciate that he was honestly pretty cordial in his responses. I was actually kind of off-put by it and probably ended up being a little bit more aggressive in responses to him than I meant to, which is why I'm bringing him up. Shout out. Didn't mean to be so mean. I wasn't that mean, okay? But I felt like he was attacking me, and I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, man. And like, I probably shouldn't have done that, okay? I probably should have just been nice, treat everybody with respect. The internet is ruining me. I've been on it for 6 months, trying to be a content creator, trying to interact with people, and these mother effers have ruined me. I think everybody is out to get me now. It's like freaking going to war or something. But anyways, but I thought it was an interesting question, and it's something that I haven't heard anybody ask before, so I really did appreciate that. We have one more question, or one more comment. It wasn't really a question, but it's going to lead us into the news here. So this is from our friends over at TikTok. This is specifically from Zinny Fried. Zinny Fried, he says, quote, "You can't, quote, steer Sony back. This decision was made, all caps, entirely based off consumer spending habits and trends. So what has happened is that literally everyone in the world decided to do over 85% of their software purchases on PS5 digitally. Physical discs were rotting on shelves, leading to retailers slashing prices to the point where there is no profit. Sony charges retailers $55 a disc for new releases, which lead to, oh my gosh, I don't know if he has too much all caps in here. I can't do it. I have a 2-hour episode to record, bro. My voice is going to kill me. Which lead to retailers offering less physical discs than they used to. And those discs were still rotting on the shelves. So now, instead of GameStop ordering 500 copies of a new game, they're only offering 150 copies, and they're still not selling. Point being, this is a reaction to how we have chosen to spend money on our money, and people can get online and LARP like they don't care about, like they actually care about physical media, but Sony has the effing numbers to prove otherwise. If people were regularly engaging with physical media, it would be too profitable to fade out. Don't be mad at something we as a society / culture actively chose to not engage in and join on a regular basis is being taken away. The mere fact that we are even more able the mere fact that there are more digital PS5s in the wild than physical should tell you how people really feel. Don't listen to someone's words, look at the actions and see the truth. Thank you, Mr. Fried. So the only thing I actually have to refute here is there are nowhere near as many digital PS5s in the world than regular. I verified that before. I've been doing a lot of fact checking in the past few episodes, but there's almost 85% of PS5s that are in the wild right now, as of a year ago, according to Zarkana, are 85% physical. So they have a disk drive attached. Only 15% are digital. So that's the one thing I disagree with here. I don't know where you got that information, but everything else, bro, spitting facts. So I apologize. That was a long comment. Didn't give any lead into it, and I was yelling at you for half of it, but I wanted you to understand the veracity, the passion that this man is speaking with. Mr. Fried on TikTok. He speaks facts, and that leads us to the news. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, the news segment. Of course, as we have made tradition, we will be talking about Sony's PlayStation disc fiasco. Just like Mr. Fried said, there's a lot that people seem to be acting like they care. A lot of people seem to be acting like it. And I don't think a lot of people actually do. I think that the longer this goes on, the more people I see, the more I read about it, the more I'm like, hey, I don't think anybody who's saying these things actually cares. Like, it's weird the amount of forced empathy and concern that people are showing towards the death of physical media. Because look, I was upset, okay? But statistically, you mother effers didn't care. Like, statistically, your actions showed that you did not give a frick about this. So I talked about that on the last episode, and then literally the next day, Matt Piscatella of Circana, which is the main video game statistics and research analyst firm, he came out and he made a tweet or a post on Blue Sky, I believe, and he had some absolutely horrific, like, I don't know how this didn't just shut everyone up when he said this. So typically a very reliable source of information from Mr. Piscatella over at Circana. And he says only 7 PlayStation games have sold more than 100,000 physical copies this year. This is a quote from VGC, specifically quoting him from his tweet. But 2 PlayStation video games sold more than 10,000 physical units in the U.S. during the week ending of July 11, 2006. 7 have only sold more than 100,000 physical units this year to date. Come on, guys. I genuinely don't know how you look at that number and say, oh, yeah, this is a problem. I kind of get why Sony decided to do this. No one's buying these things. And I've already gone over the stats. 85% of people are no longer buying games physically at all. Or at least of the purchases, those are not being made. Look, I don't typically buy physical day one. I have bought several physical games this year, but they are all older games or they have been used. So those aren't going to show up because most copies for a game are going to be bought day one. 90% of copies for a game are typically sold within the first few days, and beyond that, it's kind of peanuts. So like, I'm looking at a copy of new unopened copy of Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, which was a very successful game, that came out last year. It's supposed to be very good. One day, maybe I'll actually play it when I have the time. But in this case, it's sitting there unopened. I bought a new copy. But because this game has been out for several months, because the hype has died down on it, obviously hundreds of thousands of copies of this game are not going to be sold this year. That's just not going to happen. So obviously that kind of a game is not going to come up in that kind of like study or research. And then on top of that, I'm buying a bunch of used games, and that doesn't show up as a sale either within like this at all. Anyway, so it's not a new game. It's a used game. So I buy a lot of used games, like a buy two get one free sale at GameStop. It's a great way to get a bunch of old games, or excuse me, new games that typically don't go down in price very easily. So like I just got Black Myth Wukong and like a couple of Nintendo games because those games just simply haven't or won't go down in price anytime soon. So it's easier just to get them 33% off on a buy two get one free sale, plus an extra $5 off because every used game at GameStop is $5 less than its new counterpart. So it just makes the most sense, right? Financially. So, but I'm not going to be included in those numbers, is essentially where I'm trying to get around to. All of my purchases would not come in under that particular statistic. You have to be buying a game day one. And I kind of understand why the want to buy a game day one is moved into more of a digital space, because you can pre-download the game and then the game is going to be available to you at launch the moment the game is ready. Whereas if you get a physical copy, you have to probably stay up until midnight and go to a GameStop and get the game, or you have to wait for the game to be delivered to your home, which could sometimes take several hours, another day or two. Sometimes if it's really messed up, it can. I've heard of people having to wait over a week for a game that they've bought day one. Just depends. So that is, I think, significantly skewing that as well, because I think anybody who really wants to play a game day one, and that's where most games are going to be sold, the time frame, at least the window, they're going to buy digitally because they can pre-order, pre-download, and have the game ready to go at a moment's notice. So very obvious to me there. But what Matt Piscatella is saying here is that you mother effers are lying. If you really care about physical games that much, look, I get it. As a guy who says I love physical media, I specifically mean I love the financial aspect of physical media. That's what appeals to me the most. Like digital ownership, I do care about a lot, but like the main reason I buy physical is so that I can buy a game for cheaper and sell it back when I'm done if I don't like it, or if I know I'm never going to go play it again. That is what I see as the biggest benefit. I also enjoy the collecting aspect, having a game that the market deems is higher because it's rarer or was more popular or something along those lines. I like that, the market aspect, but I'm a big business head. So like that's like a very autistic way of me to think in the first place, right? So in this case, it's not that big of a deal. But you people have to understand that if you are going to be screaming physical, 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 you got to be buying games like all physically. Like you can't just be like, well, yeah, like I went to GameStop once and bought a $5 copy of Supersonic Racing from the PlayStation 3, and that was, like the one physical copy that I bought within the last month or two, and it was pretty nice. It's like, okay, well, you are not an industry driver in any way for what the industry gives a frick about. Like, I'm sorry. One, you are probably the only mother effer who did that in the world. Let's just first say that. But you are also such peanuts to people. You gave whoever the platform was $0. You gave GameStop $5. And they probably lost money on that because they probably had that traded in when it was like a $10 trade-in or some bullcrap. Somebody probably had bought it at $60, turned it around, and gave it back and got $10 for it or something. And now GameStop's selling it for $5. So like GameStop lost money on that copy, selling it to you for freaking peanuts. So like, you are not who people are talking about. In order for anybody to care about physical games, you have to buy everything physically. So if you're telling me, oh yeah, the physical hardcore that cannot live without physical is out there, and you're buying no games, like 100,000 copies. 7 games this year. Within the past 7 months, we've had 7 games, 1 game a month out of the hundreds of games that are releasing every week, it seems like. But out of the dozens and dozens of games that release every month, high profile games that have physical releases, only 7 of those have reached 100,000 units. And I think that you may be saying, well, 100,000, that's like a lot, right? No, it's not. 100,000 is abysmal. Like, that's really bad. If any game sold 100,000 units, it would be any game with a significant studio backing it that wasn't made by like one guy. That game is an abysmal failure. Like, it failed. Like, there's probably no way that team made their money back on that game. Like, Soros, for instance, the most recent Sony PlayStation IP, sold probably somewhere in the range of 300,000 copies. That's physically and digitally. And that is really bad for that team. Housemarque. Really, really bad. Does not look good. And when we had only 7 games reached 100,000 just for physical, and that means you're probably talking about the biggest games of the year. And we know that, like, let's just say Resident Evil, easily probably the best-selling game of the year, right? That's probably not hard to just off the top of your head imagine, right? We already know that game sold millions of units, at least 1 million units. At least. So it sold 100,000, probably a little bit more, physical copies. My guy. You're talking easily 80-90% of physical sales. Easily. It's not even close for that game. So are you like, this is kind of crazy, and we still see this huge army of people screaming for digital goods, or screaming for physical goods, and we simply just don't see the numbers backing it anywhere we go. So you have people who are essentially just crying wolf. They are lying to people, commenting on things, trying to run some weird campaign, some crusade against Sony for a cause that they simply don't believe in or simply haven't ever supported. So, like, it's just so weird. There is a change.org petition currently out there that has over 340,000 signatures saying, please, Sony, bring back the physical copy. Don't do this. Don't kill it. Let it live on. And here we are. Only 7 games have had 100,000 units sell over the past year. 7 months. What are we talking about? I get that you probably didn't buy all 7. Like, I probably didn't buy every single one of the top selling games this year. Probably one was like Crimson Desert, and I don't want to play that. So, like, I understand that, like, there's going to be diversification in these numbers. Not everybody's going to buy all 7. But out of the 340,000 people that are all physical strong, that just doesn't look good, right? The math doesn't add up. Okay? It just doesn't add up. If you are that big of a physical gamer, we need to be buying more games. And it simply just doesn't seem like that is the case. Could there be extreme outlier circumstances like I was referring to earlier, where maybe physical gamers are the ones who are a little bit more price conscious, so they're going to be the ones waiting or buying used or something like that? Yes, that surely could be the case. But simply stated, we do not have any math from any studies anywhere that show that that is the case. So, moving on to our next story, we had our Sony financials. And you're saying, Henry, wait, you just sounded like you weren't really done ranting about that. Oh, honey child, I'm nowhere near done ranting on that. Let me get into it for you. So Sony had their quarter 1 2026 financials, I believe, is what. Yep. Quarter 1 2026 earnings call this week. And guess what they said? Well, the CFO, Lin Tao, First time I've ever heard of Lin Tao specifically, but the CFO doesn't normally come up in a lot of the business decisions. So we are now learning about her or him. I don't know. I'm going to hope it's a her for inclusivity. Thank you. Took me a second there. Again, I'm having a heat stroke, so bear with me. So they said on the call, zero impact on the business. They will not change their mind. And moving forward until they are done with discs, a physical copy will be a code in a box. Let's break that down. The executive of Sony, who's in charge of the numbers, in charge of the money, they are telling everybody right now, investors, which, by the way, it would be illegal to lie to. This is not changing anything. There is no change in anything moving forward because physical games are dead. We have no change. We have no change in mind. These people have not convinced us. We do not think it will affect our bottom line. And so let's get into her choice quotes, shall we? So, in a translator, I am coming through VGC on this one, ladies and gentlemen. So bear with me. There's going to be a lot of quotes. We'll circle back around. So, she starts off by saying, quote, "We announced that from January 2028 onwards, we will no longer be manufacturing game discs. So, we announced it 1.5 years ahead." I have to admit, that was fairly generous of them. Next. "There are various reasons we made this decision, the biggest being the digitalization of contents overall has been progressing." That's a big factor. It's not just for PlayStation, but for all kinds of content. Digitalization is progressing. And so, when we think about the future, we put a lot of thought and time, and we cautiously considered this, and we came to the conclusion, and we're going to cautiously move forward. This decision, we have received various opinions, and people have a strong views, and we understand that the community has put forward those views to us. Games are loved by many people. It's a form of entertainment that's loved by people, and it's connected to people's fond memories in many cases. And so we understand those emotions. We want to consider that, and in the future digital ecosystem, quote, "how do we engage with gamers?" is something we would like to continue to explore. Lin Tao stated that the company has been in discussion with retailers in an attempt to find solutions to make both sides happy, suggesting that codes in a box releases could still come to regions like North America. Quote, with the completion of disc production, we communicated this at an early stage so that we had enough time to be able to listen to various partners' voices, which is funny because we've actually heard varying reports about that. A lot of people seemed very surprised by this. In North America, this has already happened, but without discs in the package, there's a code included. That's how they sell in North America. There are regional characteristics for each regional partner, so we have to go through a dialogue so that we can end up in a win-win situation. And then finally, Lin Tao on how the decision has currently had zero business impact. Quote, "At this point in time, we are not seeing any impact on our business. But going forward, about the content sales, a large part is already digitized. And therefore, as a result of the discontinuation of discs, we don't see that there will be any negative impact on our business. However, as I already said, the players have attachments, and we have to think about how to respond to that feedback." So, a bit of a nice ending there, kind of throwing people a bone, a small bone, but a bone. So, what do we take away from this? This is obviously a lot of corporate speak, a lot of back and forth, not that much to really garner. In other words, what this means is Sony don't care. This is a bookkeeper saying this did not affect the books. Okay? Sony's CFO has come out and said, we don't see any negligible impact. You people said that this was a big deal. We are currently not even seeing a problem with our financials. It's really a blip. Like, there's really not that much going on. We are not going to turn back. And, you know, we see people complaining, but who cares? We're going to keep going. And I mean, like, why shouldn't you? Everybody who I've ever heard, all the research, every analyst, all of the numbers I've seen have all pointed to the physical ecosystem is dead. It is dying. It is on its last breath. And we are sitting here watching it gasp out its last breath of air. And sure, Sony probably could have done this a lot better. They could have easily, closed its eyelids gently and, put a nice pillow over its head and just cried a soft tear over the physical game's body. But instead, they kind of kicked it in the head until it bludgeoned it to death. And, like, that just wasn't probably optically the best move. Probably could have done it better. All right? But in this case, I understand why they did it. Like, there's simply no reason for them to keep this around. Them saying this has no business impact, I think makes all the people out there whining and crying about physical dying proves they've done nothing. Either they didn't care about physical in the first place, or they just simply have not actually put their money where their mouth is. They haven't stopped their PlayStation Plus subscriptions. They haven't stopped buying games digitally. They haven't stopped engaging with the ecosystem in one way or another. Nothing has changed. People have tried to sign change.org petitions. People have tried to schedule blackouts for PlayStation, Network, and some people have tried to organize, mass unsubscribing from PlayStation Plus. All of this just seems like gamers, bro. I hate to say that because I wish gamers had balls. I wish gamers had balls. But whenever something like this happens, you always point back to, like, oh, well, remember when people were trying to boycott Call of Duty in a Steam group, and then everybody in that Steam group day one was playing the new Call of Duty game. It's comical. It's just weird, though, when people are saying, I love physical media, and they just don't even care about it. It's one thing to be like, I hate something and I won't support it, and then you do. But when you say I love something and you don't support it, it's a weird look. Like, sure, you look like a hypocrite when you say you hate something and then you still partake in it anyway. But, like, when you say you love something and then you don't, you just look like a liar. I don't know which one is worse. But, like, in this case, I don't know. I feel like it's just people who probably did walk away from the digital ecosystem or from the physical ecosystem, walked into the digital one, but have fond memories of the physical ecosystem. But it's like, bro, you can't have both. Like, Sony would love to kill the physical ecosystem. They are giving profits to Microsoft, or not Microsoft, but to Walmart and to Amazon and all these people who they have to split store shelf with when they put a physical game in the box and give it to you and have to ship it to you or ship it to the store and have to make the game and print the disc and blah, 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 blah. Like, sure, that's, maybe not a massive chunk, but, like, in any business, they're looking to cut margins. Why would they not stop doing it if they could? You gave them the excuse. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but, like, we have executives at Sony now backing that this is, like, nobody actually cares about physical. Like, this is a LARP. And I see the one concession here is they are considering how to respond to feedback, which is very pleasant, okay? So what I garner from that, what I gather, is Sony is looking for probably a way to ease the transition. They are not pulling back. They have committed to a factory to help build AI micro lenses that's going to make them way more money than these discs for PlayStation ever did. So there is no way they're turning back. There's way more profit in selling a game digitally than there is physically. So why ever turn back? It just is silly. And then, of course, the whole nobody is actually, like, a vast minority are even engaging with physical at all anymore. So why would you actually go back? The fact that Sony is trying to give you any concession of, well, okay, like, we know that was a big part of the ecosystem and we don't want to F you guys that bad. We'll consider what we can do here. Bro, I'm surprised they're doing that. I feel like this is the whole way they handled this screams cocky Sony. We have seen cocky Sony in the past. That's how the PlayStation 3 started. We do not need Sony to go back to cocky Sony, and the whole killing physical thing feels like cocky Sony again, because they're like the de facto console again. And at this point, I just think if you get anything from them, that's amazing. But I think that I'm hoping what the response is okay, we're going to give you the ability to transfer all of your physical games. If we know you have a copy of that game, you can transfer it physically. Or we'll give you a disk drive that you can plug into your PlayStation 6 and you can use that in perpetuity. I still think that probably transferring the games from physical to digital and giving you a copy that way is probably best, but like, because that at least future proofs it, because who's to say that disk drive won't work on the PlayStation 7, so future proof is a little bit better. I feel we are looking to future proof. We want our ecosystem we don't want to ever have to do this again. We don't ever want to have to go through this, well, this medium is dead, so now you lose everything from it. I don't love that idea, right? So I still believe that you mother effers are complaining about nothing. It sucks because, like, as somebody who does play a lot of physical games, I hate seeing people who are probably freaking lying about playing physical games that they don't actually play, and they're making me look stupid. I would rather have gone down as like, hey, Henry from the Plug and Play podcast is the only mother effer still playing physical games, and I could be like, oh, woe is me. I am really the last person who's playing physical games, and everybody else could be like, I don't give a frick about that guy. He's stupid. He's the only person playing physical games. But at least I could be the actual only person playing physical games. Now people are going to look at me and be like, everybody says they're playing physical games, man. I know they're not. So you probably don't even play physical games. I can't even die with my dignity because of you people. Pisses me off. Can't believe it. But anyway, that's the physical game controversy. Yet again, we just have an executive saying that none of this matters. Like, all of your complaining means nothing. Nothing. So, welcome to reality, kiddo. Nobody cares about your opinion. All right. Moving on. Somewhat tangentially related. We have a couple of small stories from Xbox. So Xbox testing out a new tier of streaming games you already own with ads. Yummy! Everybody loves ads. So the reason I included this is because this is clearly like another evolution in the streaming landscape of video games, and I think one that took way too long to come about, specifically adding ads to the front of your gaming session. So Xbox is currently testing a feature where if you own a game on the Xbox platform, so like you bought the game fully, not Game Pass or something like that, you can already stream games via Game Pass at a higher subscription, depending on your subscription. And then you'll get like the higher tier you are, the less your queue time is supposed to be. But in this case, they say, well, what if we just mask that queue time with an ad? And then you can play your game that you own streaming, because that obviously costs us server space. So you can basically just pay your gaming session with an ad. And we'll only put it at the beginning of your session. The catch here that I'm reading is that the sessions would only be 1 hour long. So I would be interested to know how that works. So like if I'm in the middle of playing, I don't know, 007, the new James Bond game, and I played it for an hour, and I'm in the middle of a cutscene, does it say, uh-oh, You just met your hour quota. We are going to have to kick you out. Now go and watch another ad. Or is it just going to be running an ad over that, pausing the game, running an ad, and then continuing the stream? I don't know. We don't have that information yet. I'd love to find out. But in this case, I feel like a Game Pass tier with ads just simply makes a lot of sense. It would lower the Game Pass subscription. It would make Microsoft more money, and it would give players more choice. I'm always supportive of like a Netflix tier. Like obviously Netflix does this, you know. Give people a Netflix tier where it's cheaper, but you have to watch ads. It's like, okay, nobody wants to watch ads, but will I, suffer through a couple of ads just to not have to pay another $5 a month? Like, yeah, sure, why not? It gives people more options. It helps people who are a little bit more financially constrained, and I'm always for that. So, yeah, it's a little inconvenient, but I'm willing to tolerate inconvenience because I don't have money. So, that is just how the world works. So, I'm just surprised that it took us this long, but cool that we're finally making steps in that direction. Hopefully, it comes to Game Pass subscriptions. We kind of make that a little bit more accessible. Maybe you can stream to your TV. That would be nice. We're still a long way from that, but I do think that is the future eventually, is getting to an all streaming future. So, next, we have the Xbox and PSN outage. Both PSN and Xbox went out, just to add insult to injury over the past couple of controversies they've had the last month or so. Xbox was out for like a solid day. PSN was out for a much shorter time, but the horrible part about it is that it happened right before the Marvel Tokon beta. So that was a big first party PlayStation game that they were anticipating. A lot of people were anticipating, and of course the PSN was out, so they couldn't partake in the beta at all. So this is kind of one of those things that a lot of people talked about. I think that it was mainly because there wasn't anything to talk about, mainly because everybody just kind of wants to clown on these guys right now. They're doing a lot of bad stuff. Here's the thing. The PSN and Xbox go out all the time. Like, it's not a new thing. Like, it happens all the time. It's typically little blips, just like the PSN outage was. The Xbox one recently was a pretty big deal because it was for an extended period of time, and it also locked you out of just doing literally anything. Like, you could not access your games. You couldn't access your library. You literally could not do anything with your your console was basically a brick in terms of gaming usage because of this outage. So like, all hail the digital future, but like that's everything, right? What if the power goes out? You can't play your games. Like, there's always something, but you're hoping that this kind of stuff would be alleviated. So I think these were pretty small stories, but again, I saw a lot of people talking about this. Here's another one from Microsoft. Everybody's favorite, layoffs. Layoffs. Everybody likes layoffs. I mention this because it's a very well-known studio, and I have a very big soft spot for this studio. But Double Fine lays off 23 of its 90 staff, so about a quarter of the staff. After being let go by Microsoft and becoming independent, they axed 23 jobs. Unhappy times over at Double Fine. This is obviously the outcome we were expecting. I'm obviously surprised that we haven't seen more announcements from some of the other studios that went independent as well. The problem with that is I think those guys got buyers. So like somebody like Undead Labs, I think has an investor who's continuing to float them at this point because they're about to release State of Decay 3, and that will make money. So that publisher is probably fine with paying for the staff up to this point. Same thing with Ninja Theory. Senua is in the process of just about to come out, so you might as well just keep everybody around so they can finish that game. And then, Double Fine, on the other hand, has not found a buyer, so they don't have anybody floating their employees' salaries. This is the ultimate outcome for anybody being let go for these companies. Obviously, a much bigger and better opportunity than just being shut down entirely, which Microsoft had the full right to do. They could have easily done that, and they let them go free. But in this case, Double Fine has been struggling for a long time. They are an industry darling. They have made some of my favorite games ever. I love the Psychonauts series. It's easily one of my top favorite games of all time. Psychonauts 1 and 2, both. I love both those games tremendously. I have a huge soft spot for Brutal Legend, even though I think that game is horrendously flawed. Like, I still think that there's so much charm, so much personality, and so many awesome ideas in that game. Like, I think it's totally worth that studio existing, even for that thing just to come out at all. But let's be real. Double Fine has really stumbled recently. Kiln was a massive failure. Keeper was a massive failure. Rad, I don't think, set the world on fire. And those were the 3 games outside of Psychonauts 2 that Double Fine produced. And Rad, under Microsoft. And Rad was even a game that was pretty much done by the time they got to Microsoft anyway. So before that, I mean, like, can you really point to that Double Fine has done that's like was a massive critical and commercial success? Obviously outside of freaking Psychonauts, which, by the way, Psychonauts 1 was a massive commercial failure. This is a studio that to me has always seemed like it is on the verge of collapse, and I am so surprised that they continue to put out these experimental and artsy and unique games when they continue to not seem to perform very well. And I feel like Double Fine is simply one move away from death at all times. Obviously, Xbox coming along and picking them up, I think, was a godsend. But now, you typically, when you get a big company backing you like that, you up your head count so you can produce productivity. And now that you don't have Xbox writing the checks anymore, that big number of staff is now really hard to continue to float. So that's why they have to downsize. And it's really unfortunate. And I think anybody at Double Fine is probably a really unique and creative and talented individual. And I hope they find their way and I hope they find a new job. But in this case, I am still very worried about Double Fine. I would love to see who ends up picking them up and what they end up doing with Double Fine and what Double Fine thinks they can do to survive moving forward. But at this point, I'm just very, very scared for them. Again, a publisher or developer that I have a very soft spot for, like a very, very soft spot, but it's increasingly difficult to see a survival path for that studio if they continue to act the way they have and develop the games that they've been developing over the past several years. And finally, we have the Xbox financials. That's right. Sony and Microsoft both had their financials recently, and here's what they had to say. Specifically, the choice quote here is that Xbox Asha Sharma and Microsoft's Satya Nadella, or the CEO of Microsoft, said that they expect Xbox to be growing again by the end of 2027. How are they going to do that? Well, let me read you some quotes from the VGC article summarizing this wonderful financials. So, Xbox content and services revenue declined 10% compared to the same quarter 4 results of the previous year. Xbox hardware revenue also declined, according to Microsoft, with a 13% drop compared to quarter 4 financial year 2025. This has been a recurring situation for Xbox throughout the past financial year. Microsoft's quarter 3 earnings report showed that Xbox's content and services revenue was down 5% based on the same period last year, and the hardware revenue was down 33% year on year. Its quarter 2 earnings result also showed a year-on-year decline of 5% and 32% respectively, while quarter 1 showed a growth in 1% in content services and 29% decline in hardware revenue. So you probably just heard a lot of the words number and then or X number and decline. And what makes this a problem is that has been a recurring issue for Microsoft for years, for several quarters, quarter on quarter on quarter on quarter. And what that means is it's really bad. The numbers look really bad at Xbox because it's not, oh, well, we're down this quarter. And then they go on the next one. It's like, oh, we're down from where we were a year ago. Like, we're down from the quarter that we were just down from. So basically, add those numbers up, you know? Oh, we're down 5%. We're down 10%. We're down 11%. Well, that means you're actually down 26% overall from the past year. And that has happened to Microsoft for a long, long time. And they were hoping that that could turn around and, you know, Game Pass was going to explode and everybody was going to be happy and they were going to make Netflix money and everybody was going to be billionaires and rolling in the dough. And look, that sounds amazing. But Xbox has been floundering for so long, I understand why all the leadership is coming out right now and they're like, this is a train wreck. It's a train wreck. We need to reset everything. We need to fire everybody. We need to make sure we're doing some vastly different things than we were doing because it was not working, especially at a company as big as Microsoft that is used to being one of the most profit-generating corporations in the world. It's kind of crazy. I can't believe they survived as long as they did. I have to imagine Phil Spencer had some kind of charisma walking into Satya Nadella's office and being like, hey, bud, well, we're going to do this Game Pass thing, and we're going to make this game. It's called Redfall. It's going to be the tops. You're not even, you're just going to knock your socks off, Mr. Nadella. You won't be able to contain your excitement for this Redfall game. It's got vampires in it, made by Bethesda. We're going to buy Call of Duty? Come on. Who doesn't love Call of Duty? And then all this happened, like, oh man. I'm surprised Phil Spencer wasn't out sooner. I'm surprised they didn't try to make a drastic change sooner. These numbers are shocking. It's shocking. And I can't imagine Satya Nadella. I mean, that has to be a freaking massive sore on his side that he's been dealing with for so long. So, hey, kudos to him for letting Xbox flounder this long, I guess. But that's why you have to take such a drastic U-turn approval or approach for what they're doing now. So, speaking of that, Mr. Nadella, Satya Nadella, actually comments on the current state of Xbox and its future. So he says, quote, Xbox declined, stating the company that the process of undertaking the reset mentioned by Sharma in the past. Quote, when it comes to Xbox, we are making the necessary decisions required across our content portfolio, platform, and operations to reset the business for long-term growth, Nadella said. We have the best IP in the industry and talented studios around the world, and we believe we can bring these strengths together and expect a return to business to growth in fiscal 2027. Okay. So this is something that Asha has said, and we now have Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, kind of parroting it and saying he agrees. So what is Microsoft's plan moving forward? Well, according to the CEO of Microsoft himself, they're going to focus on the content. They're going to focus on the platform, and they're going to focus on the operations. What does that mean? It means exactly what they've been doing. Make Xbox a viable console again. Give people a reason to actually buy an Xbox. What does this mean? Game Pass is a secondary thing now. I don't know what that means they're going to do with it. I love Game Pass. It is a great value for gamers, and I hope it stays that way. Less so now that the prices increased significantly, but still, ultimately, you can still use Game Pass as a very valuable financial tool if you know how to use it correctly, no doubt. So, Game Pass, probably a thing of the past. Unfortunate. Because, again, I really enjoy streaming services and having a large access to a vast, different buffet of games for me to peruse. I enjoy that. The portfolio. They own Call of Duty. They own Skyrim. They own Halo. Hey, these are massive IPs, some of the biggest in the world. Sure, they haven't been doing that great recently. Literally none of them have. Like Bethesda has really kind of lost a lot of its luster from the gaming populace. They didn't really love Starfield that much. Halo obviously is kind of on its last leg. 343 has kind of beaten that franchise into the ground. And then Call of Duty, while it still sells tremendously, kind of still sits around in the back getting like a 60 on Metacritic, and you kind of wonder why anyone's buying it anymore, because dang, critics don't seem to like it very much. So all of these franchises have seen better days, but yes, the brand recognition is there. Can you take these things and potentially make what used to be good good again? Yeah, why not? You could do it once, just do it again. You have the formula for some reason. You at least have a brand or IP that people care about, so utilize it. They do have a lot of building blocks here to absolutely make Xbox great again, to quote a president. But operations is also something that they had to focus on. And by operations, they of course mean firing everybody. They had too many people, headcount was too high, and more specifically, how are you going to make money when you have to pay people so much? Come on. So you kill everybody's job, and then it certainly makes profit a lot more easily accessible, because now you don't have anywhere near as many expenses. Easy math. There's less in the minus category, so the plus is going to be higher, right? Well, that is admittedly part of how business works. So in this case, when you put it like that and we're looking at it, the only thing that I'm like, let's be real. All of these things, every single thing that they have done could easily backfire. That's the problem. Like, okay, how are you going to convince people to go back to an Xbox? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. Oh, well, we're putting Gears back on there. You have to buy it if you want to play Gears. I mean, no, I don't. I can play it on Game Pass on PC. I don't need to buy your console. I'm still able to get this pretty easily. Okay, so what is going to convince me after you really just kind of suicide bombed your own platform for me to go back there? When I've kind of committed to other platforms and started buying games digitally and building a library on other platforms, why would I go back to yours? That doesn't make sense. Okay, portfolio. Cool. You have great IP. You have some of the most well-known, beloved IP in the industry. There is no doubt about that. You could genuinely make an argument that Microsoft now has IP that is more well-known than Nintendo, the industry icon. And like, I think it's kind of a hard argument to make, but you could make it. They have Call of Duty, the #1 best-selling game every year. It's kind of, I mean, like, there's no game more recognizable than Call of Duty, just simply stated. So, yeah, they have an IP portfolio that is stacked. Have they done anything with it? No. Ever since buying any of this stuff, it's all floundered. It's all been very difficult for any of these games to be recommendable at all. So they're horrifically mismanaging these studios. How do you make a company that's already mismanaging their studios manage it correctly? Get a business person in there? I don't know. I don't know if there's a correct way to do it. I think all of these studios were already kind of on that path, and Microsoft just kind of gave them the freedom. They gave them more rope to hang themselves with, unfortunately. Okay? Operations, laying a bunch of people off. I don't love that solution. That solution is not my favorite, certainly. Is it business-wise an understandable thing to do? Like, technically, on a book's, like, objective, factual standpoint, yes. If you fire people, you don't have to pay them as much money, and therefore you can make more money without them. Sure. But optics-wise, it is horrific. I think that gamers have the mindfish, or the memory of a goldfish, but like, you really got to start making some really good games and do it a lot in order to make people forget about this. This is a big deal. Like, you're gutting a lot of the industry's most beloved studios, because you bought a lot of the industry's most beloved studios, and then you're like, well, frick, we just got to kill them all. That's no bueno. So I don't love that. I don't love seeing less people working at these studios. Hopefully more people means they can make more good games. Clearly Xbox doesn't agree with that. So I don't really love any of these. It's not that I think that all of these things that they're bullet pointing here and they're like, this is how we save Xbox. I think they're all understandable. But I think I don't trust Microsoft's leadership, to figure out how to fix these things. These things are so far in the back now. They are so beaten and bruised and battered that it's like, okay, well, how do you really fix these things? Great question. Well, I guess Asha Sharma is going to figure it out. I don't know. How do you convince people to come back to a brand that basically tried to self-emulate itself? I don't know. I don't know if you can. It is possible that Xbox messed up at such an inopportune moment for so long that there is no coming back. It is simply impossible. And it genuinely could be. Even with all the money in the world, it would be really hard to bring back people and convince them this is a platform worth being a part of. I would genuinely recommend Xbox just be a publisher at that point. Just be a publisher. But I don't know. I am not CEO of Microsoft. I am not CEO of Xbox, and I never will be. And even if I was, I think I would not do a good job. I think that is too much for me. All right. I don't have the business acumen and probably the Harvard degree. So, well, I definitely don't have the Harvard degree, but I don't have the equivalent of the intellect of a Harvard degree, or probably social acumen. There's a lot of things that I don't have, okay, that would probably qualify me to be the CEO of Microsoft. So, pray to God, I guess, that we're going to have another competitor in the gaming industry. I really do want Microsoft to survive. I really do want them to continue, because I don't want Sony to just kind of run rampant, because I've seen what they do when they do that, and it's never good, mainly because just in general, competition is good for everybody. So please keep them around. But it's just, it's going to be the U-turn of the century, man. It's going to be the U-turn of the century. And I'm rooting for him. I really am, but it's just not looking good. All right, and somehow I took an hour and a half to talk about something I didn't even think there was that much to talk about, but I rambled for an hour and a half. So, this is why I have a podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for sticking around, even through my heat stroke addled brain, as I continue to make excuses for. Definitely thought last week's episode was a little bit stronger, but I think we're still doing okay. We've had some good conversations. I hope you've enjoyed. The energy's been up. We're going to try to keep it up for the impressions segment before my voice dies. This is a different impression segment than normal. So, after beating Xenoblade 1, which took a long time, a very big JRPG, I was astray. I didn't know what to play. I had a lot of options. I had a lot of, typically when I commit to a month for a single game, I start seeing other games come out. And luckily, it was a bit of a slow period, but still I had other games that I was buying on sales and coming in, through physical and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, I want to play something else. I want to get to something else so bad. Oh, what could I play? I wish I could play so many things. And I ended up not being able to commit. I'm just a loose woman with this kind of stuff. I just could not commit to any one game, and so I was jumping around. Normally on the podcast, what I do is I wait until I finished a game, and then I talk about it in depth, and because I prefer that. I would rather hear somebody who's talked about and finished a game rather than somebody who played, 15, 20 minutes of it and was like, yeah, this is what I think about it. And it's like, okay, you can have an impression of it within 15 or 20 minutes, but who knows? If your impression is positive, maybe you freaking hate it. You may hate it within another 2 hours. If you asked me after playing, Dynasty Warriors for 30 minutes, any of those kind of games for 30 minutes, I'd be like, yeah, this game is great. I could play this for years. It's one of the best games I've ever played. And then you come back to me probably an hour later, and I'll be like, this is horrible. I can't believe I even enjoyed this in the first place. This is the most repetitive trash I've ever played in my entire life. So, I don't particularly appreciate somebody telling me that a game is good within 30 minutes. It's like, okay, cool. Come back to me when you finish it and tell me if the game is anywhere near as good as you're feeling right now. Typically, games try to put their best foot forward, so you're not going to hate it initially. So, anyway, that's another story for another day. But I typically don't try to do that. But in this case, all I've been doing is playing games a little bit. So I don't have a full game to actually come back and talk about, but I do have a couple, right? One of which is Rhythm Heaven Groove. Rhythm Heaven Groove is a new Nintendo Switch title. Nintendo has been putting out a lot of smaller games as of late. Obviously, Tomodachi Life, which was a significant success considering I don't think they were expecting that at all. Pokemon Pocapia, which is a Dragon Quest Builders kind of spinoff, but with Pokemon. And now we have Rhythm Heaven Groove, which is a $40 game. They just put out Splatoon Raiders, right? Which another $50 game, and Star Fox, another $50 game. These are all smaller, obviously not even full price titles, and all doing pretty well. They're finding their niche, and none of which are like getting critically super high reception. I guess Pokemon Pocapia did. But beyond that, they're all just like kind of hitting like mid eighths, which is great. But it means there's probably flaws to it. But Rhythm Heaven is a series that I've been interested in for a very long time because this series has been memed to heck and back on the internet. If you are any fan of the internet from a decade and a half ago, you will recognize some of the memes that were spawned from Rhythm Heaven. So specifically, the one that I'm most familiar with is a wrestler, a woman interviewing a wrestler. Tiki 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 desu ka? Oh, so desu ne. Okay, maybe that meant nothing to you. Maybe I just made a fool out of myself. But that's what I've been doing for the last hour and a half. So I don't think it's anything too abnormal. But it's a rhythm game. It's a rhythm game. You are playing a bunch of crazy mini games that are wacky and weird and typically take with like a minute and a half. They're not very long, but getting them right is not as easy as it seems. So in these games, you're typically presented with a very simple task. So for instance, I am playing as a crab, and I have the ability to control both my claws, and I must press the claws at the right time to float a macaron into my hole, my crab hole, so that I may eat it later. And then sometimes I'll have a plum that comes along and is tossed to me, and I must press the button at the right time, but the timing is different for a plum. And so like stuff like that, it's all weird. There's a game, probably my favorite game in the game, a mini game within the game, was a game where you spell drinks that have the word A in it. Specifically tea, soda, and I believe what was it? Cocoa. That's it. It was cocoa. And every time you spell it correctly, you get a stock image of a random human being drinking that specific drink. It's just weird. It's just kind of crazy. It's really Japanesey, and I love that kind of stuff. I also love rhythm games if done correctly. And this game is really interesting because normally you have like a song and you're hitting things to the beat. And with Rhythm Heaven, it's really trying to F with you. Like it is trying to mess with you in ways that I've never seen rhythm games really try to do before. So specifically, you're using visual cues and sound cues to try and hit these because Rhythm Heaven has very precise hit detection. You have to be really spot on in order to do this, making this game kind of hard at times, really hard even. If you're not rhythmically inclined, which I certainly am not, you can have a tough time with this game. And in the process of doing this, you have to use your visual cues and your sound cues at the same time. The game actually does a really fun thing, not fun thing, but a very enlightening thing. At the beginning of the game, it just says, hey, just hit the note whenever you hear this beat. Or hit the button whenever you hear this beat. And I couldn't do it. It was like not possible. But then they're like, okay, now we're going to give you a visual cue along with this. See if it's easier. And it was way easier. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is kind of crazy, like how big of a difference this makes. Well, Rhythm Heaven knows that, so it will at times try to obfuscate your view from the visual cues, and you'll have to kind of just work with the rhythm itself. And so it's really about muscle memory in a lot of ways, like memorizing the beat and when to press and how to press and what visual and like audio cues you're listening for when hitting these rhythms. And while that sounds like that could get really old really fast, the game is not long, and it kind of does get old really fast, in all honesty. You can get through this game in about 6 hours, and you do 4 mini games at a time, and then you do like a collaboration mini game. So like all the mini games that you did up to that point, but you also have to do them at the same time. So it'll kind of go back and forth. And like that'll be the climax, I guess, of every act, of every chapter. And those are always really cool, and it's what you're kind of building to each time, and it always is a lot of fun. And in general, I think I really appreciate Rhythm Heaven Groove. I think it is hard for anyone to disagree that you wish there was more here. It seems like this game could have had more going on other than just this. It almost seems like it's odd that a full game was ever considered to be made out of a concept this simple, and that you don't get massively bored with it after about 5 minutes. But because you're moving on to minigames so quickly, you're jumping from minigame to minigame, and they're all so different. You're just kind of like, what is the next crazy thing this game is going to throw at me? Because it could throw something crazy at me. And while that's all fun and good, I can see somebody being like, this is boring. I can see somebody saying, I'm not very good at rhythm games, and this game really demands a lot of me being very good at rhythm games. And I can see people being turned off of Rhythm Heaven Groove. It is a $40 game. So it's not full price, but I would say even at that price, I would say, honestly, if this game was a $20 game, like most games this size, I think I would be hard pressed to be like, just give it a shot. I think there is a demo that you can try, and I think that is your 100% check it out kind of thing. You should check out the demo for Rhythm Heaven Groove. If you enjoy it, then I think you should consider a purchase. There's a lot of games that I think even if you try the demo, it won't mean anything to you. I think you really do need to give Rhythm Heaven a shot in order to understand exactly what it is and to see if that's something that you would really be interested in. I already knew this, and I already just was kind of in it for the wackiness of it, so I didn't mind. So I was pretty happy with Rhythm Heaven Groove out of the box. There's also some multiplayer modes that are added here, some extra modes, and they're all pretty freaking like challenging. And I really realized how generous Rhythm Heaven or Rhythm games have been to me after playing Rhythm Heaven Groove, because this game really does force you to be good, like, and hit timings very spot on. So overall, I enjoyed Rhythm Heaven Groove. It's a series that I've always wanted to really kind of delve into a little bit more, and I have. So I'm very happy that I am doing that. I still haven't beaten the game yet. I'm on chapter 10 of 16 or 11 of 16. So I'm getting closer and closer as we go. But overall, it's a fun time. I still don't think I can recommend it to everyone, but I can say just try out the demo, see what you think. Next, we're going to talk about, let's see, Hololive Dreams, or Holodori, as you may say. You say, Henry, what the heck is Holodori? I'm a hardcore gamer, and I don't know what the heck Holodori is. Okay. Holodori. I need you to... Okay, before we get into this, I need you to promise me you're not going to judge me in any way, because this could be rough. Holodori is a rhythm game about VTubers, or virtual YouTubers, from the Hololive Idol Corporation. So basically, anime women that sing to you. I am a fan of VTubers, specifically Hololive, and Hololive is interesting because they've actually tried to make a lot of games before. They've published several games before. They're all garbage, vast majority of them. There are a handful that are actually, like, all of them are more or less fan-made, and some of them are actually really, really good. Like Holocure is easily the one that comes to mind. they eventually gave a blessing to HoloCure. It's like a Vampire Survivors like, and I think it's literally the best Vampire Survivors like on the market. It easily is. Genuinely check it out, even if you don't care about VTubers and you just want a good Survivor like or Vampire Survivor like, and it's completely free. It's an amazing game. But they've made a couple of others. Most have been garbage, and then a couple of others have been pretty solid. But like in general, Hololive Dreams is a massive investment that they made to make a gacha game featuring the Hololive brand. It is a rhythm game where you play as the VTubers, you build your units of the VTubers, and you play the VTubers songs. You go through story segments where you're interacting or seeing these VTubers like going on wacky antics, and honestly, the writing is horrible. It does not ever really come off as like how these personalities would even normally interact with each other. It's pretty much bland, generic, cute girl writing from any kind of random Japanese writer. So it's not very good. But there's a lot of money put into this. There's a lot of polish. It honestly is something that I wanted to get into for a variety of reasons. And because I like the music, I like the personalities, and I'm just kind of a simp for anime women. So like it really all ties together very nicely within my interests. But so this is a mobile game. It is also on Steam, but it is somewhat gimped on Steam. But in this case, it is for free. And you say, Henry, I don't like where this is going. A free mobile game. What are you about to tell me you've gotten yourself into? Well, the only reason I'm talking about this is because I played this game far more than I wanted to this week, and it is because this game is a gacha game. And I've never gotten into gacha games before, ever, really. The furthest I've ever gotten into a gacha game is probably like I played maybe 3 hours of Zenless Zone Zero, which is from the Hoyo Studios, which is the same people who made Genshin Impact. And I played it for about 3 hours, and I was like, this is okay. I don't really need to keep playing this, and I bailed. And that is not long enough to really figure out how a gacha game works. So I have been tangentially, I see people talk, all right? I see people talk about gacha games, and what I typically hear is the term degenerate thrown around about gacha gamers. And I have always been like, yeah, well, because there's microtransactions and there's gambling and yada, yada, yada. I get it, okay? I get it. I understand. Bro, I didn't know the half of it. Oh my gosh. It's no wonder these people lose thousands of dollars. This is the scariest business model I've ever seen in my entire life. Okay, so the way it works, and I've never had anybody walk me through this because I just stayed the heck away from these things. Really, anything strictly mobile is like, I don't really need to interact with that. We don't have to. I'm just going to stick to my elitist gaming over here, or the hardcore sphere. I don't need none of that casual mobile baby bull crap, okay? You know? So I've never really delved into how these mechanics work. I have an idea. I've done research. I've seen. I've read. But I've never actually interacted. So in this case, this game initially bombards you with like probably 15 different currencies. And they all do something different, and they all translate into something else. And there's a million different ways for them to combine and transfer and be utilized. And you have to have this for this one specific thing, and this for this one specific thing, and only this character can use this thing. It is like you need a freaking encyclopedia to just understand what to do with all the currencies that you get. But then, of course, there is the premium currency. So there is a kind of a poor person's currency, and then a rich person's currency, which is the pay for currency. And the poor people currency is slowly drip fed to you. You log in and you get 100. You get 100 of the poor person currency. You know, you do something in game, you get 10 of the poor person currency. But you need 2,500 of the poor people currency in order to do one pull. Now you're saying, what's a pull? Okay, so in this game, you need idols. You need VTubers, okay? In the process of getting VTubers, you need to roll for them. So you do basically a slot machine where you can get up to 10 different idols at once. And when you do that, it is gambling to an extreme. You get this amazing like cinematic where you're flipping around and it's just lights going off everywhere, fireworks are shooting off, dopamine receptors hitting maximum capacity looking at this bull crap, and then you'll get 10 things, and then 1 or 2 of them will be these super rare pulls. If you did a max, which, by the way, there's like freaking caveats to everything. So it's like, well, if you do 10 pulls at once, you could just do 1 pull. But if you do 10 pulls at once, you're guaranteed a better pull. You get one out of those 10 is guaranteed to be better. It's not guaranteed to be awesome, but it's guaranteed to be at least good. All these others are going to be garbage. Everything else you're getting is going to be trash. But this one that you'll get only if you buy 10 pulls at once is going to be good. It's like, okay, so you're basically incentivized to, because you only want the good ones. You don't give a frick about the bad ones. Why are you trying to roll for a bad one? Obviously you're not. You only care about the good ones. So you're trying to roll for a good one, so you might as well just do 10 because you want to maximize your chances. So you didn't do a 10 pull. Guess, I feel like I'm jumping the gun on this, but guess how much a 10 pull is, which is, by the way, like pretty much the default pull. Like if you're going to do it, the game highly encourages you to do a 10 pull. If you said $5, $10, $15, no, $20, one pull, one 10 pull is $20 converted into in-game currency. Oh my gosh. By the way, 80%, probably around 80% of what you're going to be getting from that pull, total trash. You don't even care about it. It's garbage. Throw it in the trash. You will never use it. You will never look at it. It's trash. The 2 good pulls that you get are not even guaranteed to be good. They could be something you don't even care about. They could be a bad pull that's not as good as like the maximum pull that you could get. $20. Oh my gosh. So you get these idols from these pulls, and in order to maximize your score, you need the best pull. So you need a 5-star idol, which is not easy to get. And then you're like, well, that's a cool, maybe you'll get a 5-star, and you'll be like, oh, that's a cool 5-star, but I actually wanted Maury Calliope. She's my favorite VTuber. I actually wanted Narissa Ravencroft. I actually wanted Fuwamoko. I actually wanted Koseki Bijou. I'm not going to keep embarrassing myself, but you understand. You maybe wanted something else. You have a favorite. You have one that looks the best, or one that maybe even synergizes the best with the idols that you already have. And so you're like, well, I already have enough in-game currency to do one more pull. Maybe I'll get what I want if I do that one more pull. And I'm already feeling pretty good. That was a pretty fun thing. That was a pretty fun gamble that I just did. So maybe I'll just do one more. And then they do this horrible thing where they give you enough for one pull. 1 10 pull. They'll give you 1 10 pull. And you'll be like, oh, frick yeah, dude. I love this. Like I'll do, and then you'll do it, and you're like, frick yeah, I get 1 free 10 pull. That's awesome. And then you do it, and you don't get what you wanted, and you're just like, how much is a 10 pull again? Oh my gosh, I think I'll do it. I am not someone who's ever spent money on microtransactions because I don't normally play mobile games, but I've never spent money on microtransactions in a game, and I have never in my life felt myself more compelled to spend money on an in-game game than this gacha game. I was like, bro, I kind of kind of really want Narissa Ravencroft 5-star pull. Like, I think I should spend $20 to maybe have a chance of getting that. By the way, do you know what the chance odds of you getting these pulls are? 1%. Technically less. So there is an event going within the game for summer bikini. I mean, like, look, okay, I told you this is a judge-free zone, okay? For summer bikini VTuber idols, okay? And everybody wanted the big booby one. There was a big booby one, and everybody wanted the big booby one, and so everybody was trying to pull for this. Funny enough, I was watching one of the VTubers do this, play the game, because of course they're playing the game. The company actually gifted all the talents iPads so they could play this game for streams. But she was trying to pull for the big booby one, the 5-star pull. You can actually tell the game, I want this one pull more than every other pull, and it will give you an extra boost in percentage chance of actually getting it. So, like, for instance, there were five 5-star pulls that were unique to that event. So a bunch of talents in bikinis. You could say one of these pulls is my favorite pull. I want a boost in the percentage of that. That pull will be a 1% chance out of the 10 pulls that you get. It will be a 1% chance of being there. The other 4 unique ones have a 0.25% chance of being there. Oh my God. Like, when I heard that, I was like, holy frick. This is insanity. How does anybody ever get anything they want? And it's by spending an egregious amount of money. Because eventually, if you don't get the pull that you want and you spend enough money, it will give you enough pity points. So every time you get a re-roll of something that you've already gotten, you get a specific currency. And if you use that, you can then cash in that specific currency to get a pull of your choice. So you get it guaranteed. So that is what I had to watch a talent do. She spent hundreds of US dollars, over 500 US dollars doing. Actually, I think she spent thousands of US dollars trying to get this pull and eventually could not get it. Got everything but the pull that she wanted. And she had to purchase with pity points this pull. So, okay, gacha is evil. We've established it's pretty much rigged against the player. It's gambling. We all know that gambling is bad for your brain. It doesn't help anybody do anything other than lose money. We all know this, okay? Okay, how's the game? How's the actual game? I like the rhythm game. It's actually very well done. It's actually a pretty well done rhythm game, especially if you like Hololive. It's a very, very well done game. If you like the music, which I'm already personally attached to because I listen to Hololive, I watch Hololive, I know the talents, so I am familiar with the music. So I do enjoy a lot of the songs. So I enjoy playing through them. Like, that's cool. Unlocking talents is fun. Playing the rhythm game, it's actually a very well-polished game. I have no issues with that. Where I do start to have issues is, of course, where the game tries to make me spend money again. So, obviously, currency in a million different ways is effed up. Tries to force you to spend a million different currencies in a million different ways. Confuses the frick out of you to hopefully entice you to just be like, throw your hands up and be like, bro, I know I can get everything I want if I just buy the premium currency. F it. And just buy everything using a premium currency when you need it. So you don't have to juggle 15 million currencies, which is a scummy in and of itself. And then you're trying to progress the story, which is the main goal. And in order to do that, you have to meet score criteria. Well, in order to meet score criteria, how do you do that? Well, obviously, you play a song and you score, you hit notes correctly, obviously. Everybody knows how rhythm games work, right? Well, let's say I am trying to hit a score of 100,000. if I have a group of talents, of idols in my group that I've assembled from my pulls, from my gacha pulls, I can level them up. If they are not good pulls, if they are not 5 stars, and if they are not leveled up, it is literally impossible for me to get a score of 100,000. Like, for instance, I may be able to get a score of 80,000 if I made 100% perfect, like no errors in the entire song. I can maybe make 80,000. The only way to make more or to make more points is to level up your talents and to get better 5-star pulls or 4-star pulls, because the default is like a 1 to 3 star. So if you have a bunch of garbage pulls and you need to like level up your guys, you literally can't progress until you get better pulls and you level up your guys, or girls, which is of course going to be frustrating, and you're going to feel like you suck. And it's like, okay, well, Henry, every game has progression. Who cares? Well, the game ties incentives to these scores, not only through this, but through active. And this is where I feel the worst. Okay. This is easily like, okay, you're like, Henry, how can you feel the worst when you just described basically going to Las Vegas, but on your phone? Like this, like Las Vegas, the scummiest place on earth. You basically just describe that, but like I can just download that and have that experience on my couch. It's like, yes, I know. This is where I really feel bad, because it targets the hardest of the hardcore and the whales. There are high score leaderboards for every song, for every event, for every week. And in order to get to these high scores on the leaderboard, you have to not only put in time, but you have to also pay. So you can only play like a certain number of songs a day. You can play up to 10 songs, and before you need to wait before like your play meter refills. So in order to do that, you can either wait, or you guessed it, you can pay money. So you can pay money to play the game more. And in most instances, I don't need to play more than 10 songs a day. Like that, I'm probably rhythm gamed out if I've played 10 songs. And if I really wanted to, the game actually allows me to like buff that amount of songs. So I can actually make it so like I'll get like 3 times the reward, but I'll also like play, 3 times or like I'll spend 5 of my plays on that one play. So I'll get 3 times the reward, but I'll use 5 of my plays up. Well, guess what that does? It incentivizes mother effers who are whales to buy people who are going to give them better scores. So the only way you can actually get like top scores is if you buy your way to the top of the leaderboards. Because only insane people with no life, honestly, even insane people with no life, do not have the time to max out the stats of all the idols in their group and get the best pulls at the same time. There is literally no way. You have to invest. So in order to, and by the way, VTuber culture encourages this, like, I have to show my idol that I'm their biggest fan kind of mentality. And so like a lot of these guys, and I've talked about meeting the Hololive community in the past, love the guys. There are some cool mother effers in this community, but it also brings out a lot of mother effers that are freaking weird. And look, I love you mother effers. The weirder you are, the better. I love all my weirdo communities. All right? I flock to you guys because I am you, okay? I'm playing the same game you are. But when I go to a convention and I see some guy hanging out in the back of the room and he's making out with his Gigi Marine VTuber plush, I'm like, guys, I don't know. Do we need to celebrate this man, or do we need to condemn him And the answer is always, bro, this is just kind of the vibe. Like, this is what we do, is we just kind of simp over anime women. And, like, that's just normal here. And it's like, look, I get it. That's cool. I like the fun aspect of it. But when we see people that get too into it, or maybe take it a little bit too seriously, that's when we need to start being like, well, maybe there's some weird stuff going on in this community we need to address. And that's when I'm looking at these leaderboards. And I see mother effers with maxed out best pulls, and they are leagues ahead of everybody else in the score charts because they're investing their money and time into making sure they are like number one on this song, or number one for this season, or number one for this week, or whatever the case is, for this VTuber to notice them, and or the community to notice them, or whatever. And this is, my understanding, not a far cry from what a lot of gacha games do, but it encourages whales. And I see how easy it is to slip into these patterns and become this degenerate gambling addict who now has to spend 15 hours a day climbing the leaderboards, trying to maintain this, because, bro, if I'm not, what have I spent this money for? What have I honestly spent this money for? And not only that, but you can spend all that money and still get nothing because it's gambling. You can spend $2,000 on gacha pulls and not even get what you wanted. That's crazy. I would rather just play. I would rather probably just pay $500 for a JPEG of a freaking anime woman with big boobies up front. And like I said, I've always heard this mentality around these gacha games, and it's always the degenerate gacha gamer. You know, they're always degenerates. And I'm like, oh, like, seriously? You know, like, we're all look, we're gamers. We're literally all freaking gamers here. We're all degenerate losers. Like, come on. Let's be real. But now that I have kind of invested myself in trying to understand and play a gacha game, I now look at this and I'm like, oh my God. Yeah, this is a problem. Like, how do we not have laws around this? Like, surely there are people who have wasted thousands of dollars not even getting anything from these games because they are drawn into these gambling patterns, because they feel the pressure to keep up, and all of this is by design. And you know, it all feels really scummy, but it has the most absolutely dopamine fueled wrapper I've ever seen on a piece of candy in my life. And it's kind of bizarre. It's kind of bizarre. Like, when I went to Las Vegas for the first time, I at least felt like I knew everything sucked there. Like, it was obvious to me. It was like, oh yeah, this place, everything about this place is just, this just kind of sucks. Like, it's kind of, it's like, yeah, there's a lot of lights, but like, it's obviously like, I remember walking the casino floor on one of the big casinos in Vegas for the first time, and I was like lost within 5 seconds. Why? Because they're literally designed to be confusing. Because they don't want you to be able to leave. They want you to be like, well, I can't find my way out. I guess I'll do another round of slots. There's a slot machine right here. Maybe I'll do it. Like, everything about that place, I was like, bro, this is just designed to make me spend money. Like, lots of money, and waste lots of money. And I feel like walking into a gacha game, it feels very similar. But at least it's like, well, look at all the pretty happy VTubers happily jumping up and down and wanting to eat cake together. And it's like, okay, I mean, that's nice. That's, at least that's very nice. I lost all of my month's salary. I can't pay the mortgage anymore, but gosh darn it, I got to see Corone eat that wonderful piece of chocolate cake. What a wonderful day it was. You know, like, I don't know. it totally made me understand why we say degenerate gacha gamers. I don't even think it's a joke anymore. Like, I would generally think that is a joke because we're all degenerate gamers, but like in this case, I mean, yeah, the gacha games are degenerate as frick. Like, they are honestly for freaking people who are gonna waste a lot of money and time, and I'm gonna keep playing it. Wah, wah. The lesson not learned. But I like to think that I have a lot more self-control than most. And that being said, even with that, I felt tempted. I was like, hey, what's one pull? Maybe I'll get it. I mean, can't get any worse than that last pull, right? I mean, my luck must be turning around sometime now. Yeah, that's no bueno. Anyway, that is Hololive Dreams. I'll continue to waste hours and hours of my life on that, and maybe my VTuber senpai will notice me, and she'll give me a big kiss through the computer screen, and I'll leave my wife for my VTuber idol. That is how that works. Next, all right, and finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about Black Myth Wukong. All right, Black Myth Wukong. If you've been on the podcast for a minute, you know I've kind of trash talked Black Myth Wukong. Black Myth Wukong was a game that came out 2 years ago and was one from a Chinese mobile developer. So they made mobile games in China, and this was their first big release. It is about Son Goku, not Son Goku, Son Wukong, I think. Yeah. It's about Journey to the Forbidden West, which is one of the big Chinese folklore. It's about the Monkey King. Okay, if you have never heard of it, you've heard of Goku from Dragon Ball Z. Goku is based heavily on the protagonist of is it a novel? What would you call it? I don't know. The story of Journey of the Forbidden West, which is the Monkey King. He's heavily inspired by that character. That's why Goku is kind of like a monkey. He's got a monkey's tail. He flies on a cloud. That is very reminiscent of the protagonist from that game or from this series as well. So it's very, very famous over there. When this game came out, it was an incredible seller. It sold very, very, very well, and it was one of the best-selling games in China ever, and one of the best-selling games of that year. And that kind of dominated the conversation around it. The reviews on this game, however, were a little bit less favorable. It was an 81 at release and was nominated for Game of the Year. And this really surprised me because being nominated for Game of the Year, there were far more better reviewed games, and I didn't see anything particularly crazy looking about Black Myth Wukong when I saw it initially, the gameplay, and it just looked like another Souls game to me, in all honesty, and slash action game, which is what it is. And it also was nobody was really talking about it like it was the best game ever. All of the conversations I ever heard around Black Myth Wukong were, hey, this game is all right. Like, it's okay. Like, there's problems with it, but I liked it overall, I guess. It's all right. Like, that's kind of the general vibe I got from this game when it initially came out. So I was like, there's no way this game should be nominated for Game of the Year. There's many other games this year that should have been nominated, and it seems weird that we're just talking about this game and making it seem like it's a big deal because it sold well. Like, if this is an 81, it should not ever be nominated for Game of the Year. I don't give a frick what other people think. Like, it just shouldn't. Because it seemed like the consensus is this game is okay, not an amazing game. It must have been a really bad year, but I knew that other games had come out that had overscored it. So, like, that just didn't make sense. At least from a general consensus, it just simply didn't make sense. So, from a personal standpoint, as a gamer who wants to understand everything and see why things are the way they are, experience a lot of different things, try to be a well-rounded gamer. I said I need to play Black Myth Wukong simply so I can confirm this game should not have been nominated for Game of the Year. It sucks. Or at the very least, it's okay. I am here to report that I actually think the game is under-reviewed. And this is a weird thing for me to say because I don't even like difficult games. And Black Myth Wukong is a difficult game. It is a Souls game in terms of difficulty, no doubt. It kicked my anus when I first started playing this game. There is a optional mini boss walking around in the first level of the game that you are supposed to run by. There's no way you can really beat him. I got Tree Sentinel the frick out of. If you're unfamiliar, Tree Sentinel is the first mini boss of Elden Ring. And what you're supposed to do is like you basically get open access to the open world and you have to start running. You like run to another checkpoint and you basically run across a Tree Sentinel, which is a mini boss. And there's no way you can beat it. You are not equipped to. You're not the right level, and he's just gonna absolutely destroy you if you try to fight him. And so it's essentially the game trying to tell you, hey, there's gonna be stuff that you can't fight, and you need to just kind of run by it. Like you don't need to really deal with this stuff. But it teaches you that in a really kind of in-your-face way very early on in the game. And Black Myth Wukong did the exact same thing. The problem with that is I didn't realize that Black Myth Wukong was supposed to be hard. Like that, this game very much threw me for a loop because I thought this game was like God of War. When I first started playing it, I was like, "Oh, this is an action game. I'm good at action games. This shouldn't be a problem at all." And then I started playing it, and like everything started beating the frick out of me. And I had to go up against bosses 5, 10, 15 times before I finally beat them. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I need to actually be on my toes and to actually be reacting and dodging, trying to perfect dodge everything, learning boss patterns. Like, and even then, bosses would 1, 2 shot me, 3 shot me if I was lucky. You know, I would go down super fast. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, no, this is a Souls game. This is a freaking Souls game. And there's some debate around that, you know, because people are like, oh, well, you don't lose all of your experience when you die. And it's really more action focused. There's skill trees, there's level ups, there's stuff like that, which I guess Dark Souls has level ups too. But in general, there's a lot of stuff here that generally Souls games tend to shy away from, and more of an action focused genre tends to kind of incorporate more. But for me, I see this as it's a hard game. It's trying to make me learn boss patterns. I have canteens that I have to drink out of. I respawn at freaking whatever bonfires every time I die, and I have to do death runs back to a boss. This is a freaking Souls game to me. You know, like it ticks enough of the boxes. It just adds other boxes as well. I don't think that necessarily takes away from this is a Souls game that's trying to, at its core, be a very difficult, punishing game. So, like, I don't normally go for those kinds of games. I think the big thing here is I don't like hard games. I like coming home after a long day's work and being able to beat a game and not have to beat my head up against a wall. I understand people who enjoy that rush of satisfaction when they've had this massive roadblock in front of them and then they're like, oh, actually, I beat that and that feels amazing. I understand that. I've been there. I've had that experience. I would much rather have an experience that is more even keel. I can beat 1, 2 deaths max, and I can feel like I worked for that, but it was easily accessible at the same time. I just simply don't. My life is hard enough, and we're gonna get to that in a minute. I'm not gonna tell you my problems in my life, but we're gonna get to that in a minute. But like in general, difficult games are just not for me. I don't like them. I didn't realize that Black Myth Wukong was hard. Okay, so I am now playing Black Myth Wukong. I am walking into this area and I am thinking I have to beat this like mini boss in order to continue. And I not very quickly learned that is not the case. I had to die like 20 times to this mid boss that was I was supposed to just walk the frick around it, and I had to die like 20 times and feel stupid as frick and feel like I sucked at this game, and I was like, there's no way I can continue this game. What you're supposed to do is run by it and come back later when you're leveled up. I didn't know that. So I was bashing my head against a wall until I eventually looked at a walkthrough. And the game in the walkthrough was like, you do not want to fight this thing right now. And I was just like, oh, well, nobody told me that. Game made it seem like I really needed to fight this freaking thing right now. It was not really needed to fight, but like put it right in my direct path and was like, this is the only way to go. You have to go buy this thing. So I just assumed. But anyways, eventually figured out I just need to keep going. So that's what I did. I kept going, I kept playing the game, and I continued to find out that this game's bosses are hard. You have to learn patterns, you have to level up, and I hated that. I still hate that. I wish this game had an easy difficulty setting. I wish this game did not make me have to work hard for winning. And look, it feels amazing. I get like I have even playing Elden Ring. I didn't really get the same satisfaction beating a boss that everybody else seems to get. Black Myth Wukong is probably the first time I've actually understood what people mean when they're like, "Oh, dude, I freaking beat my head against a wall for an hour and a half, and then I finally beat that boss, and it was the best feeling in the world." Black Myth Wukong made me feel that because I felt like I was earning it, and I felt like, like if I was having a hard time, I could go and I could go level up and I could go to a different area and there would be another mini boss that I could fight and they would give me a new ability or they would give me a level up or they would give me like a new summon or not summon but a transformation and I would be way better. And I could go back to that boss and it would be a much easier time. It would still be hard, but it would not be as hard. And that was a much more satisfying loop for me. And this game has a lot of focus on boss battles. It is some people called it a boss rush game. I think that is a stretch. I think anybody who called this game a boss rush game only played the first chapter of the game. Because the first chapter of the game feels like that. There's hardly any space between you and the next boss. There are very few enemies in between each boss battle, and there's very few areas in between each boss battle. And so you feel like you're running through an area and you just basically immediately come across another boss. And initially I was like, dang, this game is jam-packed with bosses. There are admittedly over 100 different bosses in this game, which is insanity to even think about. But there are over 100 different bosses in this game, and they are pretty compact. Here's the thing. Once you get to chapter 2, they put that you have such a much larger area to start exploring. And it wasn't until chapter 2 that I really started loving this game. And that's because it really opened up. In chapter 1, it's pretty linear. You have to go down a pretty specified path. There's not a lot of extra stuff for you to do, for you to fight, for you to collect and kind of level up with. So you're pretty much forced down a path of, well, you need to go fight this boss, go do that. In the second chapter, it opens up to this desert area, which is this massive area, and you can go in not a million different, but you can go in multiple different directions. And once you get to a specific point, you can go to a left or right, and that'll take you down this massive other path with multiple other bosses and a bunch of other stuff to cut your teeth on, level up with. And that's where this game became really cool because I started finding this stuff that I was earning by beating other bosses that weren't as hard as like the main bosses, but they were giving me new transformations and they were giving me new equipment that I could then upgrade my gear with or buy new armor with that would then upgrade my stats and make the game easier. And I could then find new enemies and go through different elements of the world that I would kill enemies and they would help me level up. And leveling up in this game actually makes you stronger, so your stats actually increase every level that you get. It's not just every skill point. And then of course I would also get a skill point every time I leveled up, and there were like skills that I was like, oh, I have to have that skill. I have to invest in that skill. And the game is very kind. It allows you to respec at any point. So this game really focuses on builds a lot. So like there's armor that will give you specific buffs. So like for instance, there's like an armor that's like, oh well, if you do a perfect dodge, your spells that you have will decrease in cooling time. So you can use spells much more frequently. And so then you can respec and you can put all of your points into perfect dodge and all of your points into spells, and you can be this freaking like way more powerful with magic than you were previously because your build is now focused on that. So there's a lot of stuff like that in this game. If you really wanted to, focus on builds, that's something that I think a part of the community behind this game has really done. But I enjoyed exploring. I thought that I got meaningful rewards every time I did explore. And then I would find a new boss, and it wouldn't be that hard. It would be challenging, but like I eventually got the hang of dodging. So I was pretty like dodging in this game. You really have to figure out. Like it's not like Elden Ring. It's not like Dark Souls. So if you're expecting that, it's not like that at all. You have to get used to it. And once I did, I was like, oh, now I have to memorize these patterns. I have to really be mindful of like this boss and what he's doing, because if he hits me, I lose half my health, and like this is going to be a really tough fight if I keep getting hit like this. And every boss kind of has its strengths and weaknesses. You can go to completely new areas, completely secret areas. That was another thing that blew my mind. I was like, "Oh my gosh, there's a secret, it's just a completely secret part of the map." Like if you have to do like a whole string of side quests and go and backtrack all over this place in order to even find this whole other area that then takes you to a secret area that takes you to this huge cinematic piece of the world and a huge boss. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I would have never thought to do this. There were some bosses that are so secret, I was like, you can't even figure it out if you didn't have a walkthrough. And I honestly think that's kind of cool. I think there's an element of that that is very interesting. I do think that you need to be doing everything that you come across, though, because if you don't, end level bosses are going to absolutely wipe the floor with you. And that's where I think this game frustrates me. I have found myself more enamored with the game's difficulty than I think I have with any other game. I really appreciate how much there is to upgrade with my character, and how I feel like I do need to do all this optional content because it is making me stronger, and I feel like I'm getting stronger. The problem with all of this is I still hit those walls. Even though I'm doing everything, I still hit those walls. So if there's ever a time where I'm like, I really don't want to do all this side stuff, it's like, well, you kind of have to. Otherwise, this boss is going to be really, really, really tough. And you can beat him without that, without all this extra stuff, but you are really going to have a tough time. And I had a boss, I had an in boss of chapter 2 was just like that. Like I got to the end boss and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is the hardest boss of the freaking game." And then I eventually was like, I just need to go and find other stuff to do. And I looked up the walkthrough, and I basically did all the secret bosses of the area, which were far easier than what I was doing with the main boss. And I went back and tried to take the main boss on, and I beat him like second try after losing to him like 15 times prior to that, just because I was getting hit and it was taking away 3/4 of my health. And so I was constantly having to heal, and I was doing minimal amounts of damage. So I was having to dodge a lot because I was hardly doing any damage. So the fight was lasting way longer than it normally would have for what they probably intended me to be a level at. So you really have to invest a lot of time into this game, and you have to be willing to really bang your head against a wall and deal with that difficulty curve of, yeah, well, you're going to upgrade your stuff and you're going to get stronger, and there's going to be a lot of oppressive stuff in your way, but then you're going to hit a roadblock. And you're going to beat your head against a wall, and you're just going to have to figure it out and learn the game, and there's not really much that you can do because you've upgraded your stuff as much as you can, and you just need to learn this boss's patterns, and you just need to freaking get good at the game. And I feel like if you are allowing me the ability to upgrade my stuff so much, and you're giving me all this extra incentive to go out and do all this extra content, that I'm of the mentality that if a player decided to mainline the game and miss all this extra content that you have in the game, they can be punished because the game will be harder because they're trying to skip everything. I think that's understandable. But I also think that if I'm going out of my way to do everything, all the secret bosses and everything, leveling up, maximizing my stats, trying to do all that, and the boss is still tough, it's still killing me in 2 shots, I think at that point, it's like, well, then you're just forcing me to grind. Like, that's kind of what it feels like, right? It kind of feels like that in some instances. And I don't love that. I want to be rewarded for it. I don't want to feel like I have to. Like, I feel like I have to do everything that's extra. And that's probably my main complaint with Black Myth Wukong, is that I always feel like I am getting stronger, and I love that sense of progression. I absolutely adore it. And I love the feeling of overcoming a hard boss, but I also feel like I should not feel like I'm doing all this extra work to just meet the bare minimum. And this game is not short. It is 6 chapters long, but it is 40 hours. And that is because of all the extra stuff. If you were trying to mainline this game and you were trying to just go straight from point A to point B and finish the game, you could probably beat this game in like 20 hours, probably half the time, maybe even less, 15, something like that. But like you cannot. If you do, great, kudos to you. You're, some Dark Souls player that tries to be a masochist and beat the game on level 1 and have no gear, freaking whatever. I get it. That's cool. But I think this game is way, 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 way more difficult than that. And it is a problem, when I feel like I'm not really being rewarded for all the work I'm putting in. And it got to a point where like I had a long day at work one day. And I was like, bro, I'm really enjoying Black Myth Wukong. It's a cool game, but like I really don't want to have to deal with more problems today. Like I've had enough. I've had enough of life for one day. Like I don't need any more of it to just beat me down. And then I started playing Black Myth Wukong and like I was in like a prison and like there was like levels to it and there was some enemy that came from around a corner. It literally was intentionally hid by the developer, swooped in, flew in and hit me, knocked me off the ledge and killed me and I lost like 20 minutes of progress. And I was like, F this game. Immediately quit out of it. I was like, I've had a long day and you're hitting me with this cheap bull crap. These cheap bull crap behind the wall, insta kill me, intentionally knock me over a cliff bull crap. And I know I'm about to get to some boss that's going to beat my anus red. Like, I do not need to deal with this today. And I just shut the game off. And like, that's why I don't want to play hard games. They are not for me. So I am about halfway through Black Myth Wukong right now. Full disclosure, didn't beat the game. But the reason I'm talking about the game right now is I genuinely don't know if I'm going to continue to play it. I think that there's a lot to love here. I think I really enjoyed my time. From my understanding, Black Myth Wukong has really been updated. Like apparently there was no map in the original game, which is crazy to me because these areas are so big and they didn't have a map. Oh my gosh. Apparently they've added a lot of stuff to this game. They've altered a lot of stuff and tried to make it a lot better for the player, which I very much appreciate. So I am playing probably a game that may have been better. If a reviewer was reviewing it now, they may have been giving it a better score. I know that a lot of technical issues were in the original release of the game. There are still technical issues here. There are still invisible walls. That was another big complaint people had about Black Myth Wukong was there were too many invisible walls. And I personally don't. I mean, like these are unfortunate things to be there, but they're not like, oh, I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. It's like, oh, there's a lot of invisible walls. Okay. I mean, I guess that's sloppy. Like you should probably just put something there that isn't an invisible wall. Just put a big rock there. Okay, well, you're not breaking my immersion and you've also put up a wall that I can't get around. Everybody wins. But like, so it just seems like, oh, well, they probably just didn't know that because they're a mobile developer and haven't ever had to deal with something like this before. And so it was probably just a rookie mistake. But like for a first AAA game from a mobile development studio, this is kind of insane. Like it's a beautiful game, absolutely gorgeous. Everything about this game is amazing. I don't think the story is particularly well told. And that seems to be something a lot of people had a complaint about is like if you don't already know the story, then like this means nothing to you a lot of the time. I still think it is followable. It's just not very intriguing, I guess. It's not as interesting as it probably could have been. Like I said, there's 1,000,001 bosses in the game, so there's always a variety of that. I think combat could be better. Like you have the same combo throughout the entire game, and it's really a matter of just like, hey, you're gonna have to learn boss patterns and dodge at the appropriate time and just kind of get good. And it's like, okay, yeah, I mean that's fine, but when I'm getting hit and dying in one hit, that sucks. Like, that's just not fun. So there's a lot of roadblock bosses that you get to, but then there's also bosses that like half the bosses I was beating in like one try. Like I wasn't dying at all because I had basically figured out how to dodge in the combat, and it was nothing like those harder bosses, which really forced me to get better at the game. So all in all, I think Black Myth Wukong is way better than what people were even reviewing it at. I see now why it was reviewed and then got an 81, and then people came out and said, oh, well, actually, it's Game of the Year. It's very possible that people reviewed it later or got to the game later, didn't actually review it, and then when they were posed for Game of the Year, like who's Game of the Year, people started saying, oh, well, Black Myth Wukong is. Because, like maybe it's gotten better, or over time I've learned to appreciate it more or something like that. In general, I think if this game had a better story and maybe a little bit more in-depth combat, I would like to see a little bit more of the action elements of this combat kind of shine. I feel like I am kind of restricted to mostly one combo and a couple of moves. It does give me enough new tools every once in a while that I've never felt like the combat is necessarily stale, but I've also felt, like Dark Souls is never, like the combat is not like in depth there, and I never got bored of the Dark Souls combat either. So like you can make that kind of work, but I would love to have seen a more emphasis on like giving the player more options with combat. That would have been cool. Again, I think you do have a lot of options, but the player typically is going to default to a very specific set of those. And I wish there was an easier difficulty. I think that really comes down to my main issue with this game is if this game had an easy mode, I think this game I would be enamored. I would be like, dang, this game's really awesome. And you could make the argument, hey, well, then you wouldn't have been itching to play it as much because you wouldn't have been getting that huge satisfaction from beating a game beating a boss when it was really hard and then finally getting past it. Honestly, you're probably right. Generally, you probably have a point there. But at the same time, like I said, bro, I got enough games to play. If you're going to try to make my life harder, and I already have a hard enough life, I don't need it to get any harder. F off. Like, I don't need that. Like, I am looking at a stack of video games. I have a backlog that makes me have anxiety when I look at it, okay? And I don't need to have to deal with, your bull crap, That's not my kind of game. It's just not my kind of game. Get good all you want. That's just not for me. And I'm too old for this nonsense. Give me my platformers with no deaths. Infinite lives. My baby games. Where's Spyro the Dragon? Where's that new Spyro the Dragon game? Give me that. That sounds like an excellent time. For me and my old rattle bones. Can't handle hard games. But all in all, I genuinely am like, why is this an 81? I feel like Dark Souls fans should have rejoiced for this game. This game should have been amazing to them. And typically those games, they review incredibly well. So like, why is this game not reviewing incredibly well? And I have to imagine that just people, either the game improved with patches, or I really can't imagine why else this game is rated so low, because even as a non-believer in hard games, like I see a lot of promise, a lot of really awesome ideas, or a lot of really good stuff in this game. So I am very actually surprised. I'm very surprised that this game is as lowly reviewed as it is, and I'm kind of surprised it isn't reviewed better. I'd honestly probably give this game like an 87. Like that is so crazy coming from me. You do not know how crazy that is coming from me, a guy who really has never been like on this. I have never been touting the horse of like Dark Souls is amazing because it's hard. I think Dark Souls and Elden Ring are amazing for very different freaking reasons, and I do not think it is the difficulty. I think there's a lot going on in those games that is amazing and is really cool, and it's not the difficulty. So I've always been anti-hard difficulty and pro multi-difficulty modes, and in this case, I think that the game did do itself probably a disservice by advertising this game as like an action game, because it's not. It's a Souls game. If you're thinking action, you're thinking easy. You're thinking normal at the very least, and this game is hard. It has made me probably want to take a step back from this developer's games, because if they are going to just make very hard games, I mean, that's not what I'm looking for. Like, yeah, I'm enjoying my time with this game when I'm enjoying it, but when I'm not enjoying it, I'm not. And I would much rather just enjoy a game 100% of the time rather than 50% of the time, or whatever, even 75% of the time. Why would I choose to play a game that I only enjoy 75% of the time when I could play a game that I'm enjoying 100% of the time? Makes no sense. So that's why I'm very skeptically looking at Black Myth Wukong, being like, gosh darn, I wish I was better at you. I wish that you weren't as hard, because I would love to play more of you. But gosh darn it. Like, I don't want my evenings to be filled with rage and me wanting to throw a controller across the room. That's just not what I'm looking for in life. So we'll see if I go back to it, if I move on. I don't know. I wish I would stick with it, but I don't trust myself to do that. So that's why I'm talking about it now. But that is it for Black Myth Wukong. Very solid game. Very solid game, honestly. Very good. But obviously you have to be in for the long haul and in for the everything the game kind of wants you to do. So as long as you can do that, it's a pretty solid romp of being the Monkey King. But that is going to do it for this episode of the Plug in Play podcast. That one went, of course, way longer than I ever would have considered it would go. I didn't even think I had anything to talk about in this episode. I had impressions for freaking 3 games because I was like, dude, I have nothing to talk about. I'll do impressions for 3 games. Here I am, 2.5 hours later. Gosh darn. But I think the impression segment went pretty well. I think I didn't stumble as much there. I think the news segment probably could have been a little bit sharper. Definitely the comment corner. Kind of rambled a bit there. I was coming out of doing lawn work, so I was a little hot-headed, and probably a little bit scatterbrained. But now I've cooled off, and I can tell you things with a nice silver tongue. I don't know. That sounds like that means I'm lying, right? I don't know. Maybe not a silver tongue, but you get it. I talk nice. I talk much better when I'm not tired. But anyway, that'll do it for this episode of the Plug and Play podcast. Thank you, friend, for sticking around this long. I hope I can call you a friend. I hope you're playing some good video games. I hope you're having a good day, good week, good year. And I will see you on the next episode. Bye-bye.